Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN What If, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of What If Deku Got Adopted? If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. Saturday, April 9th, 2006. Alright, Izuku. Are you ready to see Grandpa? Hisashi said, having crouched down to his son's level. His curly white hair bounced with every movement he made. Burgundy eyes stared down at the younger. It was a shame that they were filled with anger all the time. They were absolutely beautiful. He's sure ready to see you. Hisashi only had two emotions, white hot rage and cool white calm. He was either impeccably warm or impossibly cold, and either way the man was inconsolable. But Daddy, he'd said. Izuku didn't even register the stinging sensation on his cheek until the hand was retracting. Impeccably quick was another of Hisashi's aspects, though his movements, like a lion on the prowl, utterly deceptive. But of course, that was the point of it all. It was supposed to draw you in like a snake who circles his prey with his tail, then he'd strike when the time came, meticulously sculpted. We're going to go see him, do you understand? You're gonna do whatever he asks of you, and you're going to be respectful. That's one punishment when we get back. We haven't even left the house yet. Izuku knew that he angered his father, but he couldn't help but speak his mind, even though he was terrified. That was what made him him after all. Izuku had a tendency to talk his mouth dry, but he'd never stop there, and he had that antagonistic spirit all the Midoriyas possessed, even though his had manifested in a peculiar way. Izuku doesn't like his grandfather, he never has. The man was dangerous and ill-tempered, far, far more than Hisashi. That's where he'd gotten it from, and Izuku's father's temper only got worse throughout the passing days. He'd flinched, but he followed his father out the door, his bag in tow. The trunk was already open when he went to put his backpack in there. It contained all his necessities for the rest of the weekend. Izuku had his toothbrush, his church clothes, and an extra pair of regular clothes and pajamas, underwear. He had his toiletries, like his hair products. Izuku tried to take in all of his surroundings during the car ride, because he knew he wouldn't be able to leave the house until he had church tomorrow, not even to walk around the grounds, or play in the garden. Akui never let him play in the garden. The only time he'd ever been in the garden was when Yoshi went outside to pick flowers for the tables in the house. It was usually the cleaning lady's job, but Yoshi never liked to give her extra work, and she'd let Izuku come with her. She'd gotten in trouble that night. The cherry blossoms were just starting to bloom. We're spending the night to go to church with him tomorrow. Hisashi's voice cut through his thoughts. He'd known it as soon as Hisashi had told him to pack clothes. It didn't matter if Izuku would spend the night at his grandfather's house to attend church in the morning. If he didn't, it'd end with the family going home with Akui after church to have dinner, and he'd spend the night then. Izuku always liked those better. Akui wouldn't hurt him as much when he had school in the morning. Though, the purpose of that wasn't so he wouldn't get caught, far from it. Grandpa didn't actually care about that. Instead, it was because Izuku was less difficult to deal with when he knew he was going to school. Akui liked to mess with him before they went to church, and on top of that, Izuku just hated church. Yes, the cathedral was beautiful and the pews were polished, but that only backed up his point. There was so much hate in the hearts of the people who attended that Izuku couldn't stand going there every time Sunday came around. Yes, sir. He responded. Then we're going to the doctor to figure out your quirk. Hisashi added, sharply, looking at Izuku from the rearview mirror. Will Mama be there? At church, I mean. Yeah, she'll be there. The drive was mostly quiet after that. Just the sound of turn signals, or an occasional horn. He watched the bullet train go by and wished he could ride one. Hisashi entered the code at the gate and drove into the pull-around driveway. Izuku heard the gravel crunching under the tires. He shuddered, looking at the house in fear. He got out of the car and kept his eyes on the floor, and wouldn't dare look up. Hello, Father Tamura. Hisashi greeted. No doubt he had that stupid malicious grin on his face. Hello, Hisashi. Hey, little Izuku. Has his quirk come in yet? How's he doing? The man asked the same question he asked every time he saw the damn guy. His quirk was supposed to come in at 4, but it was normal among their family members for it to be a little late. Izuku could feel the eyes boring into his soul. He didn't dare look up though. "No, we're going to the doctor tomorrow after church, father." He replied, "We'll get it situated no matter. I only scheduled the damn thing because of Inko, you know how she gets." All for one crouch down, still taller than Izuku, who was standing at a height of 3 feet. He still didn't look away from his shoes. The man placed his hand under the greenette's chin and lifted it up. He averted his eyes away from the carmine ones as much as he could. Instead, he looked at the familiar white hair, but not fluffy and not curly. Instead, it stuck out and faded at the sides. It was almost a relief. He was getting tired of the ringlet hair his father possessed. But then he reassured himself that Grandpa was no better, so he didn't bother trying to lull himself into a false sense of kindness, or security, or any kind of compassion. It'd all be fake. "Look at me," he ordered, his voice forceful. Izuku's eyes snapped up, meeting red ones, though not identical to Hisashi's. There was a subtle difference in shade. While his father's eyes were definitely more of a dusty vermilion kind of red, Akui's were much darker, like the color of fine wine. They held a much darker meaning, and the light reflected off of them like they would a topside demon. "You're not gonna greet your grandfather, Izuku?" Hisashi said, after a while of silence, with Izuku just staring into Akui's eyes, like he'd accepted his fate. Izuku hadn't even noticed the time that had passed, and he startled into the present. Hello," he said, timidly meddling with his chubby fingers. Akui hooked an arm around Izuku's body and put the other arm under his bottom. Izuku never liked this gesture. He always felt like he was too high up and it made him tingle, and he never liked Akui to touch him. It insulted him in a way he couldn't explain. "Kurojairi prepared each of their rooms, sensei," Tamura said. The purple warp gate appeared right next to the blue-haired man. Izuku flinched. Kurojairi was another thing he didn't like. He was just an empty void with a neck guard and a vest on. Glowing yellow eyes that seemed to look at everything and nothing at the same time. "How old are you now, Izuku?" he asked. Izuku averted his eyes. "6, sir," he squeaked. "How is your mother?" he asked. "She's fine, sir," replied Izuku. There was a hefty silence. Then that stinging sensation on his face returned. "I don't know why you'd ask. You'll see her tomorrow, just like always." "Excuse me?" Akui said, apparently having taken offense to what he said, and Izuku, for the life of his, couldn't figure out the reason why. Izuku's eyes went wide in a fraction of a second. "Is it something I said? Do you think I am stupid, Izuku?" Akui asked. He wasn't even trying to hide his chastising tone. His maroon eyes narrowed more with every passing second. "No, not at all. I promise," he pleaded. "I just thought, why, you know." The man gave a grunt in response, clearly not believing him. "We've been standing out here long enough," Akui said, looking around at the rest of their faces. "Take Izuku to his room and join us in the briefing room, Kurojairi." Akui's arms loosened around him before he dropped Izuku onto the ground and opened the door. Izuku followed Kurojairi through the manor. They stopped at an oak wooden door that creaked ominously when it was opened. This was the room Izuku always stayed in. The room where he would spend most of his time in when he was with his grandfather. He would read, watch TV, sleep, and Grandpa would come in and... Izuku walked inside the room and the door was closed behind him. He locked it just in case and went over to the desk. He would never claim the room, not ever. He picked up a book and sat on the bed and read until he fell asleep. When Izuku woke up, he was met with the sound of a jiggling knob and the turning of the key. Akui ducked into the room, his features shadowed over by the darkness but very clearly recognizable in the moonlight. Grandpa's teeth glinted white as he bared them in a wide smile. "Izuku, it was incredibly unwise to lock the door. What's gotten into you?" Akui could see the way Izuku's eyes shook with terror as he made his way over. At the last second, Izuku sat up in the bed as he watched the way his grandfather moved. "Do you plan to fight me, or will you make it easy?" Izuku really didn't know what he planned to do at that moment. He wanted to run, he wanted to stay put, he wanted to fight, but he didn't want Akui to take more than he asked for, because the man had no qualms doing so. Hmm. The man said, clearly expecting an answer. He sat down on the bed, turning his head to face Izuku. Don't keep me waiting all night, Izuku really. Because if I do not get an answer soon, I will take you as if you had fought me. It wouldn't matter if you were quiet and still as a statue. That is disobedience. The clock ticked on the wall behind him, but Izuku couldn't count how many seconds went by. It could have been 2, it could have been 12, it could have been 20. The hand rubbing back and forth on his thigh brought him back to the present. He would have just sat there, otherwise. I'm sorry, he whispered, though he knew the man could hear him. For what I said. It wasn't meant to insult you. How would you like me? The words were practiced, like he'd said them 1,000,000 times before, because he had. They sounded wrong coming out of his mouth, a child's mouth to be specific. But Izuku didn't really have much choice, if one at all. Akui smiled again. That's my boy. The man pushed Izuku onto his back as he climbed on top of him. His shorts and underwear were pulled off, and Izuku held his breath as he waited for it. It almost felt worse, the anticipation of waiting for a bad thing you knew would come but had no idea when. Almost. It was too close a call. Akui was a lot of things, but a liar wasn't one of them. He was a man of his word. A bad man, yes, but a man of his word nonetheless. If he said that he'd punish Izuku because he took too long to answer, he was going to do it. Akui pushed into him, and Izuku let out a loud cry of pain. His neck arched back and he hit his head on the pillow, letting out another shout. Izuku's hands spasmed where they lie in a fist on his stomach. Grandpa had his wrists pinned above him in a second, and he began to thrust faster. Hush now, Izuku. None of that, you're being dramatic. Akui had said, with a painful snap of his hips. It made him cry harder, but that was the goal. Izuku went into a sobbing fit, trying to tug his hands free from the bruising lock he had them in. Stop it. This is nothing. If you continue fighting me, I will fuck you like a grown adult who wants to spar with me. Am I clear? He didn't expect an answer, he expected action. All of a sudden, Izuku stopped moving and his clamor quieted as he bit his bottom lip to hold his cries in. He went limp in submission, but tears still streamed down his face. I'm sorry, he'd said, almost whined. It hurts, Papa. Please. His sentence was cut off as another flare of pain erupted up his spine. Izuku shut his mouth before the sound could leave. I didn't say you could speak, did I? When Akui was done, he left with a remark about washing his sheets before Izuku went back to bed. Izuku could hardly stand watching him duck back out the way he came, listening to his footsteps get quieter and quieter as he left down the hallway. When he heard the creak of the door closing upstairs, that's when he got up. Izuku didn't intend on having Akui make a U-turn, like he'd said. Akui had no qualms about taking more than he'd asked for, absolutely none. A temptation, the man had spat at him before. Like he was fruit in the Garden of Eden, and he was the tempted, but he would also be the snake. He slid his clothes back on and collected his dirty bedding in the basket provided in every room by the door. Then he left the room. Izuku traced the oak-trimmed wall, brightened by the moon who showed herself by the floor-to-ceiling windows, only dark where the shutters stopped her from peeking in. The rain pattered softly on the windows, and at that moment Izuku never wanted to be outside more than now. He turned his head away from the window, and he was startled when he found the laundry room door opened and the light on. He scrambled back behind the wall and peeked around it. There, it was Kurogiri, his yellow eyes downturned as he took clothes out of the dryer and put them into the tall basket. He was humming a soft tune, one that Izuku was sure he'd heard the man play on the piano before. As if sensing him, Kurogiri ceased his humming and turned to look at him. Izuku, are you all right? He nodded. I just needed to wash my sheets. I didn't know you'd be here, I'm sorry. I'll come back later. It's fine. Bring them here, I'll wash them for you. It's no problem really. Carefully, Izuku walked forward with his basket in tow, giving it to the man. Kurogiri's eyes lingered on his arms after he'd taken the basket. Do they hurt? Izuku shook his head, his curls following him. No, the boy said, they ache more than anything. He rubbed his wrists, barely batting his eyes at the dark purple bruises that circled the entirety of both of his wrists. Are you hurting in general? I could take you up to Fujimori to get you something for the pain. Kurogiri didn't blink. Izuku had noticed, and he had no facial expressions besides the squinting of his deep yellow pools the man calls eyes. But that was to be expected. He didn't really have a face anyway. No. I wouldn't want to disturb Yoshi, they need their sleep. He shook his head, turning his eyes down. All right. Kurogiri said, letting the conversation drop and leaving it at that. Izuku returned to his room after that. He'd put new sheets on his bed and lied down in it, only to stare at the window all night. Shadows moved across the room until light peeked through the shutters in warm yellow blades. Izuku was certain he got no sleep that night, but he didn't remember being awake either. Sunday, April 10, 2006. Izuku got up when it was time and left his room with his bag of toiletries. He went to the bathroom down the hallway, in the opposite direction of the laundry room. First, he showered, welcoming the cold water that ran down his body, which he scrubbed. Every crevice of, twice, 3 times over, just to make sure he was clean. He brushed out his hair gently and toweled out the water that was dripping, then he added the oil and applied it just how his mom did when she did his hair. Then he brushed his teeth, then floss, then lotion and deodorant. Then he got dressed. Izuku had no trouble buttoning up his shirt and putting on his pants. It was the tie that he was worried about, and he was sure he hadn't tucked in his shirt correctly because it didn't look right at all. He made quick work of going up the stairs and knocking on Yoshi's door. Yes. Yoshi's voice rang out from the other side of the door. Who is it? Things were shuffling around. It sounded like shoeboxes and hangers being slid around the floor. It's Izuku. I need help again, he said, and Yoshi opened the door with a small smile. It's your tie again, Bug? Come on in, let me fix you up. Izuku nodded softly and walked in. Yoshi left the door cracked because he knew they'd be leaving soon anyway. Yoshi was clad in his untucked white shirt and black pants as well. I suppose I'm having a little trouble with my tie too. He kneeled on one knee and swiftly knotted Izuku's tie. Go ahead and put your belt and shoes on, okay? And as for your shirt, let me show you. Yoshi pulled his pants down slightly and put his pants over his shirt. Then, you lift your arms up high like this so you can have a little space to move around in, okay? Izuku nodded. My bathroom is right there, but before you go, what do you think? Yoshi held up 2 different neckties to his neck, red tie, black tie, or better yet BO tie? Be on the lookout tie, and stick with the black belt, silver buckle. Right on, Izuku. The 12-year-old gave him a high five as Izuku walked past him with a smile. The family left shortly. Hisashi drove while Akui sat in the passenger seat, and Yoshi and Izuku sat in the back of the truck. It didn't take them long to get to the cathedral. They entered the cathedral in a line, dipping their fingers in the water, closing their eyes, then crossing themselves and taking their seats. Yoshi stood in their selected pew with his younger sisters to her left and Izuku to her right, closest to the aisle. A song was sung as the priest and his servers walked in while everyone stood. Each of them bowed in front of the altar, then moved around to their places. The priest kissed the altar and stood behind his, turning to the current page in the Bible he was teaching today. As the song slowed to an end, he clasped his hands, and when it was done he looked back up. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, he said as he and the congregation crossed themselves. They said, May the Lord be with you. Priest Fumihito said as he looked around. And with you, the congregation said. To Izuku, it was a blur. He remembered bowing his head for prayer, crossing himself, but the words swam around in his head, and he couldn't quite piece them together. When the entire thing was over and done, most of the congregation lingered around to speak to each other, and Izuku went to his mom. Inko smiled when she saw him. Hello, baby. How is your day? It's good. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Yoshi talking with one of the other older boys who attended the church. Tuya, his name was. He was a Todoroki, and his little brother Shudo was Izuku's friend. He was planning on wandering over to him as soon as he was done speaking with his mom. And that's just what he did. When Shudo saw him walking over, he lit up with a smile. Izuku. Shudo. The two hugged, but not for too long. They'd both be reprimanded if that were the case. The pair went to sit in a pew by the front so that they could talk while everyone else mingled at the back. Izuku pulled a small Rubik's Cube from his pocket. It was supposed to fit in the palm of your hand, but he's small so it just looks regular-sized in comparison. Tuya has a big one of those. Shudo said, pointing at it. He never lets me play with it. How do you play? Izuku smiled. He was happy that he got to teach him something every once in a while. It's called a Rubik's Cube, Shuto, he said, giving it to him. It's a puzzle, and it's very hard to solve. Do you want to try? Shudo nodded enthusiastically as he took it in his palm. It didn't really occur to him to try to actually solve it, he just messed with it while his friend Izuku watched. Hey boys, Priest Fumihito said, walking over to him. He'd been talking with some of the parents and saw the two of them sitting alone. What are you two chatting about? Izuku was showing me his Rubik's Cube. It's really cool, look. Shudo said, showing the priest the puzzle. The man feigned being in awe, like it was the coolest thing he'd ever seen. I don't know how to solve it, though. Izuku kept his eyes downcast. Talking to adults wasn't his specialty, nor did he like doing it. Shudo just talks and talks to any adult that will listen to him because he doesn't get it at home. Well, may I have a turn, Midoriya? Izuku nodded, and he saw Fumihito take the cube, and Shudo gasped, wonder in his eyes. It shrunk. As it looked, it shrunk. He did, and he was amazed. It had shrunk. Fumihito laughed as he crouched, pulling his robes up his knees before they could hit the floor. Let's see here, he said, inspecting all 6 sides of the cube before getting to work. It was solved in about 3 minutes, Izuku counted in his head. Wow, he said, how'd you do that, Mr. Fumihito? Well, you've got to practice. That's all it takes. What are your plans when you leave here? Izuku spoke first. We usually have brunch at my grandpa's house. I'm sure you're invited, he said, taking the Rubik's Cube back from the man and fiddling with it. He didn't tell the man about his doctor's appointment, in fear he'd be judged or belittled. He got enough of that at home, already. I'll have to check in with Mr. Akui then, won't I? Izuku nodded. What about you, Todoroki? Well, we like Izuku's family, and we all just go back to our rooms. I usually hang out with Natsuo, because the twins are always together. Fumihito hummed as if in thought. But he didn't say anything. What about you, Priest Fumihito? Izuku asked, what will you do later? Well, I'll be working. From what Izuku had gathered from his whole life of coming to this church, Priest Fumihito was a writer. He'd mentioned his adoration for writing a multitude of times, and Izuku had seen paragraphs upon paragraphs of words in his countless notebooks. He had to go in the back sometimes to bring out some of the things they used in the sermon. Fumihito had tons of leather-bound books on a bookshelf, labeled by number in Roman numerals. They were in a random order, but it was probably a system that the priest had worked out beforehand. All day. Yeah. It doesn't really feel like work, though. I devote myself to Christ and my words. It makes me happy. Fumihito didn't seem to have any family. He never spoke of a wife or children, no brothers or sisters. Perhaps that was why he was a priest. That's really cool. My dad is leaving. By Shudo, by Priest Fumihito. I'll see you later, he said, bowing in front of the altar before he hurriedly left the cathedral, throwing a wave behind him in his haste. Izuku was all alone. On most days when he was at his grandfather's house, he at least had his cousin Yoshi there who could heal his injuries, but it was just him and the maids he'd seen in passing. Hisashi was gone too, and he knew the maids wouldn't help him. Shigaraki had left with Kurojairi a while ago. Izuku had managed to get himself in trouble earlier that morning, and he hadn't seen Akui since the man had first reprimanded him. He'd found Izuku outside reading his book in the gazebo without permission. He'd slapped him and dragged him back inside by his holeless ear. Izuku didn't know why it was such a ginormous deal that he couldn't go outside. It's not like he was disturbing anyone, and he just wanted to read his book. And now he was getting nervous. He hadn't even seen Akui since then, and it was really starting to freak him out. He absently traced the back of his neck with his fingers, while his head lay on the desk. He knew he was in trouble, he knew it. Izuku had seen the look on Akui's face when he'd snatched him up and brought him back inside. Just like he'd said, He was like a snake circling its prey, waiting to strike. As soon as Akui felt that he was winding down, he would walk down those stairs with thudding footsteps, reminding Izuku of his impending doom and suffocating him with his own anticipation. He was 8 now, he wasn't stupid, but he was weak. He had no quirk to defend himself, and that was enough as is. It was enough for Hisashi to beat him whenever he pleased, making him sit in grits and burn him until he was begging and crying for it to stop. The teachers did nothing because they believed he was really quirkless, even though the doctor had clearly stated he was going to be a particularly late bloomer because his quirk was going to front in a violent way. The doctor had taken X-rays of his quirk buzzing beneath the surface of his skin, just waiting to get out, but he had to wait for it to manifest. Hours had to have passed. Just as his fingers began to get sluggish and his eyes had begun to droop, he'd heard them. Those loud thudding footsteps coming down the stairs, just as he'd suspected would happen. His eyes snapped open and found the door. Kui was getting closer by the second. Izuku scrambled up, out of the chair, almost knocking it over. He went over to the door and unlocked it before Akui could reach it. Izuku stepped back as the man opened the door and ducked in as he'd always done. He didn't have that smile, the crude one. Instead, his face was blank with indifference. Though, it was all the same to Izuku. Kui would always come in and take what he wanted, regardless of the expression on his face. His grandfather picked apart his appearance without saying a word, only scanning his body from head to toe, and it managed to be equally as perverted as it was insulting. The striking orange of the sunset highlighted the impossible red in Akui's eyes, like indigo would a lion's mane. "You understand what you did wrong, don't you?" "Yes, sir," he said, taking one last look before he set his eyes downcast. "I shouldn't have gone outside without permission. I'm sorry. What do you want from me?" The question had an underlying meaning. It was, "What will you take from me?" instead. To imply that there was some kind of bargain, some kind of deal, or some kind of debt, was to imply that he had a choice in the matter. The only debt that Izuku was repaying was being born. "There's something I don't understand though, Papa." "What is it?" Akui grunted. He didn't like to be kept waiting. "Why aren't I allowed to leave by myself? Yoshi does it." Something flashed in Akui's eyes just then, anger, perhaps. He put his hand on the side of Izuku's head and drove Izuku to the desk, pushing him against it with a thud. "What of it? You don't question me, Izuku." With his other hand, he pulled Izuku's pants down and unbuckled his own belt. He gave no warning, pushing in entirely in one go. Izuku had no wind left in his lungs, and if he did, he'd have screamed until his eyes popped out of his head. His hand spasmed next to his head, and he watched it, his mind going blank for a second until he registered the brutal pace at which Akui was going, how much it hurt. Tears ran down his face with no sign of them stopping. The white wooden desk burned against his cheek as it rubbed back and forth. There was no reprieve in sight, and it wasn't very likely that Grandpa was going to get tired out easily. "What have I told you about questioning me, HM? Every time, you turn around and do it again and again. Do I need to keep you from school? So that you can learn a real lesson? Is that what I need to do?" "No. Please," he cried. "I didn't mean to upset you, I'm sorry." "Yes, and while that may be the case, you already have. Now that you've apologized, now what? I will collect my penance regardless of if you're sorry or not, Izuku. This is the consequence, and it is necessary. And anyhow, you're only sorry because I caught you. I'd have never known otherwise." Izuku didn't remember when Akui left. He'd been stuck in the same spot since the sun was up, but he did remember what he'd said before he'd departed. Yua does what she likes because she believes she has free will, and even though her leash is long, it is still a leash. Just as a golden cage is still a cage. Now it was dark. He started to sob again, punching the top of the desk. Pain to distract himself from what was really going on. It didn't work as well as he believed it would. He kept punching, not even stopping to acknowledge when his knuckles were bloody and had smeared all across the wood. Izuku's breathing went ragged, and for a split second, everything was quiet. He went nearly delirious as a blinding white light exploded from his chest, white flames dancing along his body but never touching him, nor causing anything else to catch fire. Izuku yelped, falling onto the floor and onto his back. There, in the corner of the room, two women stood, tall and broad, like Amazonian warriors of the past. He blinked, rubbing the heel of his hand into his eyes. This wasn't real, he was hallucinating. He opened his eyes again, and they weren't in the same spot this time, they were fucking closer. He hadn't even heard them move. "Hello, Izuku," one of the women said. She had silver hair and dark black eyes. "My name is Suna Maliger. This is Cassiel. You're probably wondering who we are, why we're here, the whole spiel. Please calm a little first." The other woman sighed, the one with hair as dark as night and eyes as silver as polished iron. "This is your quirk, Izuku. We're from heaven." "You're dead?" "Yes, my dear. We died in the Trojan War. Do you know of it?" "Yes." "Well, since you're so tall I can infer that you both were of Penthesileus' army of Amazonian warrior women." "Smart boy," Suna said, "very clever indeed. But as for your quirk, you know of purgatory and hell, yes?" He nodded. "These will all be your responsibility. You will be able to harness the power of heaven, hell, and purgatory, but in turn, you must look after them to be granted license with these powers. Of course, they have their standard rulers. Jesus still guards the gate, purgatory is still ruled by Eve, and hell is still ruled by Lucifer, but your job is to make sure everyone is doing their jobs and nothing gets out of hand." "Will I get to meet Lucifer?" "Well, sure. You are kind of his boss now." "Oh, okay. After that, Izuku had to wear a quirk-canceling collar around the estate. He didn't mind it much, and he got to take it off when he left. It did get in the way of him being able to wash his neck. Friday, February 13th, 2009. Waking up in the middle of the night, Shudo was oblivious to what was happening on the other side of his door. He was absolutely drunk on sleep and couldn't register the things around him. Shudo hadn't been aware of why he'd woken up though. It was his wooden door banging every handful of seconds. He could feel the door drumming in the frame, he could see it, but Shudo only chopped it up to his growing headache from the noise. It was so loud, louder than it should have been if it was anywhere else in the house. Shudo opened the door in a daze, and he was watching as if the view was in slow motion. Tuya fell backward from the doorway, almost hitting the floor before he stumbled and caught himself. His brother staggered, not quite standing to his full height, his knee was bent and his arm held his abdomen. "Shudo, come with me," Endeavor said. He could faintly see the aquamarine eyes of his father in the moonlight. Shudo was about to nod and obey. Before he could, Tuya sprung in between them, forcing himself to stand up straight. Shudo's eyebrows furrowed when he saw it. The deep red stain in Tuya's ivory hair. He could make out the color, even in the moonlight. He reached out to touch it, but let his hand drop before it could make it. "Dad, you can't. He's 9, and it's 2 in the fucking morning." Tuya said, scowling like a grown man. "What's the matter with you? Can't do what?" That was the question that kept echoing around the borders of Shudo's head. He stood there silently, his hands hanging by his sides tiredly and his mouth agape with curiosity. Enji's mouth twitched with annoyance and the side of his lips kicked up into a sneer. His eyes drifted behind Tuya, to Shudo. The older sibling reached up and snapped. "Hey," he said. "Don't look at him, you look at me." "Tuya, every day it is something with you. Do you really want my attention that much?" "I'm not in the mood for your bullshit, Endeavor. The real question is, do you want mine that much? You seem to enjoy provoking me so that I beg you to hurt me instead." "What, you think I'm just going to let you beat on my little brother?" He laughed in disbelief. "In your dirty dreams, Dad. You're just as disgusting as her." Enji walked forward. Clever he meant, but Enji would never let that come out of his mouth. It gave his children too much power when they received praise, he wouldn't stand for that. "I see her in you more than any of your other siblings." Enji got up close to Tuya, easily a head taller. He wrapped his hand around Tuya's face, squeezing his jawbone. Yeah, old man. I wonder what the public would think if they found out you like to fuck your kids." Shoto's eyes widened. It's not like he was new to it, it's just not what he expected to hear. A harsh thud rang through the room. Endeavor's forearm was pinning Tuya's neck to the wall. NG had a harsh snarl on his face that Shoto distinguished as the "stop doing whatever you're doing or you'll regret it." "Shut up before I shut you up," he said, baring his teeth like a wolf. It looked like he was going to start foaming at the mouth. "Do it." Tuya smiled, blood coating his white teeth as he laughed. It came from his chest, and it was filled with glee. Endeavor dragged his 17-year-old brother out of his room like you would a rabid dog. Shudo stood in the middle of his room for a minute. He wouldn't be able to fall asleep again, not after that. It was always another segment of more reasons to hate your father. And this was definitely on that list. He would put it down more than once out of spite. It made him feel so misplaced. Saying it and hearing it out of someone else's mouth is off-putting. And Shoto didn't realize how much until now. Luckily for him, Tuya always took his place before things could go too far. Shoto didn't even know what too far was, but he knew that Tuya was willing to punch a hole through a door to stop it. Shoto remembered that day like it was yesterday. He'd helped Fuyumi wash the blood-smeared walls before they turned brown in color. It was Tuya's blood. He had punched a hole through Shudo's locked sliding door, just to get to Endeavor, to stop him from sliding his hand down Shudo's pants. His breath stuttered just thinking about it, how scared he'd felt. The door had to be replaced, it couldn't have been fixed or ignored. If Endeavor had had his way, the hole would still be there. It was right above where the lock was, big enough to fit his hand through, big enough to watch Shudo whenever he pleased. He would most likely open it on his own and storm in whenever he felt like it, just to beat Shudo. Tuya wouldn't allow that to happen. He'd gone to the local home improvement store after leaving UA the next day and had the replacement door delivered a few hours later. Tuya had taken the old one off and put the new door on the hinges, all by himself, all while NG watched with distaste, and when he was done he'd turned to their father with a face that said he was winning poker. "Why the long face, Dad?" he'd said. "I broke the damn thing, shouldn't I replace it? And here I thought you'd be happy that I'm becoming a man." Takami had never liked Endeavor. Ever since he was a kid, he'd hated him. Endeavor was the reason he'd been taken from his parents at 5 years old. The commission had done reconnaissance on he and his entire immediate family's quirks. They learned about Kigo's wings, his ability to move the feathers, and they'd created an entire societal agenda around him. They had sent Endeavor in, along with child services, to raid his house. They deemed his parents unfit to raise him, even though that was far from the truth. His parents were great, really, they were just poor. And instead of child services worrying about the children in actual danger, facing actual abuse and neglect, they singled his family out and stole him from his house like it was nothing. That was the last time Kigo had seen his parents. Ever since then he'd been raised in the Hero Public Safety Commission's private child training facility. Weeks after he'd gotten there, they told him his house had mysteriously caught on fire, and his parents didn't survive, and they didn't speak of it again. But Kigo knew. He knows the commission like the back of his hand, they raised him in it. Kigo is the commission, and all they did was deal with back-alley assassinations and cover-ups that gave you a headache when you sit down and actually look into them. The lie that was the Hero Commission went so far and so deep, Kigo wasn't sure they knew how to stop. They were the biggest society in all of the entire continent of Asia. There was no refusing them, there was no going against them. Kigo has killed, and Kigo has covered up because he had no choice. All these years, he'd been silently watching Endeavor with disdain, watching him raising kids that he abused, a wife that he beat, 2 other children that he ignored. The original plan was to get close to Endeavor so that he could kill him, overkill him. Falling in love with his oldest son definitely wasn't a part of the plan, and he really sat back and thought about his stupid-ass plan about killing Endeavor, the Endeavor, and Kigo decided to tone it down and put it on the back burner for a few years. When he'd learned the true extent of the abuse the family suffered when the doors were closed, Kigo was sure he'd had acid reflux for at least a week. Tu had said it so nonchalantly he'd snuck it into their conversation as a joke, like it was nothing, and he had the nerve to be worried when Kigo got sick. "I have some pot, you know. Maybe if you smoke it you'll feel better." "That's not how that works, Tuya." Kigo hollered, bent over the toilet after puking his entire stomach out, spit drooling from his mouth. He reached up and flushed the toilet, but already he felt another round coming. "Fucking relax, Kigo." Fuyumi has some Tums in the medicine cabinet. I'll get them for you, okay? You know I was joking, right? Tuya was kneeling behind him, making sure Kigo's hair didn't get near his face while he dabbed a cold towel on his sweaty forehead. What about Endeavor abusing you? I would hope not, that's serious shit, he sneered. Otherwise, you made me throw up for no goddamn reason. No, not about that. Tuya chuckled, but it was obvious that he was guilty. I meant that I don't really have any weed. He said it like it was obvious. My dad would beat my ass, he checks my room every day. Fuck you, Tuya. How hard? Tuya smiled, wide and toothy, and Kigo couldn't be mad at him for long. He didn't have the voice of an angel, not at all. Tuya had the voice of a junkie who was on his 45th pack of cigarettes that day, who was asking you for money, but he was a hot junkie. Tuya was charming in his own, albeit very strange, way. Walking up to the front door, Kigo prepared himself slightly. He was just coming to sit with them a little while because Shudo had called him and asked him to come over. While this was occasional, it was normal, and even though Shudo's voice sounded calm, cool, and collected, there was something that made a bad feeling settle in Kigo's gut, an undertone, his breathing. It was quiet, but it was erratic. So, Kigo came running. Not literally, but he flew over here as fast as he could. He brought himself to knock, only to have it opened before he could even do it. There Shudo stood, looking around behind Kigo frantically, as if Endeavor would know he'd dropped by. Kigo was never supposed to know about their family secrets, he was walking on a thin line as it was. Dad's gone, he said. We have to be quick, I didn't know who else to call. Tuya looks really bad and he won't wake up. Tears were gathering in his eyes, and Shudo let them fall. It definitely struck Kigo as odd. Shudo was stressed out, his clothes were disheveled, and his hair was tousled like he'd been pulling at it. Kigo stormed inside, already walking down the hallway after Shudo. Where is he? He's in the den, what are you going to do? The tone of Shudo's voice broke him. Kigo dragged his hand down his mouth with a hand on his hip and contemplated what to do next. Shudo, you understand that we have to take him to the hospital. We can't. Shudo frantically waved his arms up at him. He'll hurt me so bad if we do that, Kigo, we can't. Kigo tapped his foot nervously and bit his nails. You're right. What else can we do? I think I have someone we can call. He pulled out his phone and hastily put the passcode in. Who? He sniffled, wiping his puffy eyes and red cheeks with the back of his sleeve. Shudo didn't sound too hopeful. One of my friends, recovery girl. Shudo's mouth went slack, and his dichromatic eyes went wide. Our recovery girl? Why you're friends with recovery girl? It was cute how quickly he got distracted, but Kigo had other more important matters. That's not the point, we need to call her. He picked up his phone from where he'd set it down on the coffee table. Kigo sat down on the black leather ottoman and got to work calling her. Hello, yes. No, I'm fine. I have someone for you to heal, and it'd be preferred if you were to drop by. You can? Awesome. So here's the thing. I need you to heal one of your students. We're at Endeavor's house. Please be quick. He's not in a stable condition right about now. She was over there very quickly, quicker than some regular old lady. She side-eyed Kigo like she'd read his mind, that made him hide his smile with a cough. / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / / I stabilized him and healed his injuries. It will leave scars from how severe they were, but they will fade in about a month or two. He should be waking up shortly, and should Odiri make sure he takes his vitamins. You know how he is. He nodded with stars in his eye. Yes, ma'am. I will. She smiled, patting his head. That's a boy. // Recovery girl left, and the next minutes were spent with Kigo and Shuto smiling and laughing with each other. It was abruptly cut off when they heard Endeavor's tires crunch on the gravel. Shuto shot up. You have to go. He's back. I'm not leaving you here alone. You have to. It's going to happen anyway, there's no sense in delaying it. Please, Kigo. Leave, I'll call you later so you can come see him, but for now you have to go. Back door and sneak out when he comes inside. Okay. Kigo gave in, with his shoulders slumped a little, but he complied and snuck out of the back door. He heard the front door slam, and that's when he made his escape. Backslash 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 forward slash forward slash forward slash forward slash. Shuto, where are Fuyumi and Natsuo? It's her job to make lunch and do the chores. She's at work. It's my week to do chores and my day to make lunch. Natsuo is at his STEM program, and Fuyumi said I could stay home from school today. Endeavor's eyebrow twitches, and Shuto backs up slightly. Oh, she did she? He says, and the boy lets out a trembling sigh, looking down at his wringing hands. Put your hands at your sides, boy. Have some respect. Enji walked toward him slowly, and Shuto jumped to doing what he was told and backing up when his father came forward. You better answer me, Shuto. Tuya can't save you now, not in this state. I'm sorry, sir. He nearly whimpers. I just thought. Fuyumi said. Fuyumi's not me, her words hold no weight. I am your father, you listen to me. And me only. Tuya groans, his head lolling on the couch. Dad. A bead of sweat rolled down his forehead and nose, and he took in a breath laboriously, swallowing dryly. Just leave him. Just leave him be. He hasn't done anything wrong. Shuto peeks up at Enji, looking back down just as quickly. It won't happen again, sir. Endeavor grunts, turns around, and walks away. Shuto doesn't dare look up nor move a muscle until he's out of sight and Enji's door is shutting behind him. Tuya. He whispers, turning towards his older brother and climbing onto the couch next to him. Thank you. The white-haired man wrapped an arm around Shuto's shoulders, pulling him closer. He kissed his little brother's forehead. I can't let you get hurt, Todo. Monday, March 16, 2015. Izuku had managed to swiftly get out of the house before his father woke up. Hisashi allowed him to do whatever he wanted, as long as he trained for a set amount of time. He just didn't care about curfew anymore. Kui was the only one strict about curfew. He was strict about everything. He was strict about punishment, quirks, curfew, discipline, and so on. Izuku couldn't name all of them off of the top of his head. Even though his memory is eidetic, things still slip his mind. He would have to think of something specific to recall something specific. Izuku called his quirk the Eye of Judgment. It was pretty cool sounding. It was what went on his quirk registry, or any legal document created after he received his quirk. Izuku thought it was pretty flashy, but not everyone agreed. Most people around him were Catholic. Muzutafu is a city largely dominated by Catholicism. Izuku was raised Catholic. Shuto was raised Catholic, his entire family is Catholic, and they weren't so happy when they found out that, oh, Izuku can speak to Lucifer, the devil. They drink tea with the blood from the bodies of all the demons in hell together every Monday and Thursday. Only a little bit of it was true. They did drink tea, but it was just regular tea, maybe the really expensive kind. Jesus would attend, and they had a great time. There were usually a lot of things the three of them had to talk about. Business, making sure everything was running smoothly. The two of them kept it civil, but they were brothers, so there were fights sometimes. But other than that, they got along just fine. Those Catholics seem to completely disregard the fact that he also talks to their Lord and Savior and completely zero in on Mr. Morningstar, which was honestly the most annoying thing in the whole entire world. Lucifer was the sweetest, but because he was so sweet he got kicked out. Jesus is the older brother. It was only natural that he was a bully, but in a good way. Izuku's quirk is very versatile, in the sense that it's really not a quirk at all. He's just the gate between mortality and the afterlife, the gate between a whole different dimension entirely. Izuku can summon things on the other side. Now, he wouldn't be able to summon things here at this point in time in his current dimension because humans can't process things coming out of thin air, for dimensions. They were able to process up, down, left and right, back and forth, but not things developing where there was just nothing with no process behind it. The afterlife was able to comprehend that because they're ghosts and they're cool. Since they're in alternate dimensions and not his mind, anything that goes in could come out and vice versa. He could send anything that was in his line of sight to the dimension he chooses. His quirk only gets stronger in the presence of a Bible, a cross, a spellbook. Anything significant to identify with people from that format. Izuku wouldn't be able to use an Ankh unless he was communicating with someone currently living. An Ankh being the Egyptian hieroglyphics symbolizing life. Izuku had worked with his quirk to see what best suited him when harnessing the power, and he'd written his combinations in both a travel-sized journal and a large leather-bound, coffee-stained, 60-pound book that was 12 inches across when it was closed. Izuku was so caught up in his nerves that he didn't even notice the rock that he tripped on. He stuck his arms in front of him to break his fall, but he never hit the ground. Oddly enough, his eyes remained open throughout his fall. It was strange. It was years and years of trauma piled on top of him, being told, "Look at me," and getting slapped if he didn't comply. Izuku had learned to keep his eyes open, even when he knew danger was coming. His arms stayed by his sides, and his eyes remained open and staring ahead, like a deer in headlights. Slowly, his eyes went to the space next to him. A girl, a very pretty girl. She had brown hair, with layered bangs. They framed her round face perfectly, and she had rosy spots on her cheeks, like she was blushing. The girl put her hands together, and he fell back onto his feet. He gave her a grateful smile as she held his hands so that he wouldn't fall on his face. "Thank you. I'm Midoriya. Nice to meet you. We'd better get going, the exams are about to start. Good luck." He nodded, and just followed her to where the written exam was being held. Izuku wasn't nervous about failing, quite the opposite. He would be sad if he failed, but he would be safe. Dad wouldn't beat him if he failed, because he wouldn't know. Hisashi wanted him to inherit his villain title, Pyra. That's why he was trained every day. He would find out where his 15-year-old son was going to school, sooner or later. Hisashi is a lot of things, and dumb wouldn't ever be one of them. Yeah, it might take a little while, use the term, well, very loosely, but once he was onto you, and Hisashi could hold a grudge like nobody's damn business. Yeah, Izuku could forge a signature and he checks the mail and all that. But the sports festival, and whenever Tamura would miraculously decide to attack UA because of his crippling hatred for All Might, because it was definitely going to happen, Izuku was screwed. Because, like an idiot, All Might decided he wanted to announce that he was going to be an educator at the top hero school in the country. The written exam was fairly easy, then they transitioned to an assembly room and Izuku took his seat. There, Present Mike explained the practical portion of the exam. They had to immobilize the robots for points to get into the hero course. Wait, only immobilize? Like, they didn't have to turn them off or anything. The contestants had to get them to a point where they can't attack them back, whether that meant destroying them, finding the off button, programming them to attack other robots, or, in Izuku's case, send them all to hell. The mock city rumbled and shook. Before they disappeared one by one, then disappeared in groups, until all of the ones in his line of sight were gone. He didn't care about playing dirty to get what he wanted. It was one of the not-so-concerning traits he got from his father. Izuku never cheats at chess though, that was a fundamental rule. He'd scaled one of the buildings by an alleyway and climbed up the fire escape after jumping on a trash can to get close. Whoever designed the city designed it that way on purpose. If the trash bin weren't there, some wouldn't have been able to get high enough to reach the ladder, but, as Izuku said, he trains every day, and he can jump pretty goddamn high. That was enough points to get into the hero course, so he decided to lay off. Izuku left off the building the same way he came. There were pained whimpers to his left. He heard them before he saw her, the nice girl he'd seen by the front gate. He saw her face peeking out under a sheet of concrete, heavy, from the looks of it, and Izuku rushed over to her quickly. He lifted the concrete with ease and put his arms under her knees and the curve of her back. Izuku looked around to find where he was supposed to take her. Luckily, the exam was just about done, so the medical professionals were already here. He walked over to the closest one slow enough so that he didn't jostle the other teen's injuries. Izuku pushed her hair away from her face. "I never caught your name, you know," he whispered. Yoshi always told him that if someone had a concussion and there isn't a medical professional around or close enough to deal with it, talk to them. You don't know if it's safe for them to fall asleep yet, and that's exactly what they'll want to do with an injury. "Uraraka," she said, "Ochako. That's a beautiful name. My name is Izuku. I already told you my surname, so..." I don't want to talk you to death. What's your favorite color, Uraraka? Pink. Yeah, I like pink too, he said, mulling over his answer for just a second, but my favorite would have to be yellow. Like buttercups. Yeah, exactly like buttercups. Finally, he reached the woman with the syringe for a cane. She looked like a very nice lady. Set her down here. Dearie, she said, and Izuku complied, lying Uraraka down on a cushioned blanket. The woman, who he knew as Recovery Girl, leaned down and kissed Uraraka on her forehead. Ochako's previously snapped ankle fixed itself, right in front of his eyes. Medical quirks are so absolutely fascinating and not appreciated nearly enough as they should be. Uraraka's eyes drooped one final time before they closed, and her breathing went shallow. She was asleep. Do you have any injuries, young man? Recovery Girl said to him after she'd stabilized the other teen. The question shocked him, and he truly had no idea why. I know, ma'am. I'm fine, he said. She gave him an okay, went off to assess any other injured students. Izuku briefly wondered what would happen to her after he left. Would she stay in the school's infirmary? Would her parents come get her? Is she in a coma? Could he visit her? Izuku pushed it far back in his mind. He walked back to the train station and waited for the bullet train to come so that he'd be able to get home. You know, one of these days he should really invest in a bike. Bikes are cool. Monday, March 31st, 2015. Izuku was banging on the door. Did he have a key? Sure he did. Aunt Mitsuki gave him a key when he was 7 years old. So, why bang on the door when he could open it himself? He wanted to fuck with Katsuki, short and simple. Kaken, open the fucking door. He shouted. I'm not gonna wait out here all day, Kaken. I might break the glass and blame it on you. Katsuki opened the door with an attitude. Damn, do you ever stop talking? I was going to open it. You've got to be quicker than that. Izuku waltzed in like he owned the place and sat down at the kitchen table. Where's my baby? Where's Kino? He said, looking around. Bakugo turned his chair around and sat down next to Izuku. He's at the groomer, you know. It's a dog thing, I don't know if you've heard of it. Maybe you should try it sometime, with your golden retriever ass. Fuck you, Kaken. Izuku held the letter opener in his hand. Katsuki opened his mouth to protest, but Izuku stopped him. Before you say anything, I never intended to use it here. Katsuki snatched the knife away, along with Izuku's letter, and cut them both open by himself. Izuku wasn't allowed to have sharp objects in his hand. The blonde teen handed Izuku back his letter and put the paper knife on his side of the table, very far away from the other teen. Izuku noticed, but he said nothing. It was necessary. Ready? He asked. Shut up, Izuku. What do you think? I wouldn't have fucking handed it back to you. Katsuki rolled his eyes. I was just asking for dramatic effect, you absolute ass. They simultaneously turned the letter upside down, and the contents dropped out. It was a disc. Both of them played immediately, and Katsuki got up and took his to another room. It was distracting and very overstimulating to hear All Might's voice fall out of sync when he ran off the opening script. Izuku had placed first, with 89 points. Katsuki let out a throat-ripping, blood-curdling, stomach-gurgling scream, whether it was from complete rage or true happiness. It was loud, even with him being in another room. You damn nerd. Yeah, I'm happy that you got in, but you didn't have to get first. Izuku just chuckled as he left the house. Tell Uncle and Auntie I said hi, and tell them that I beat you too. You owe me 1,000 yen. Then he rushed down the block as fast as he could. He heard Kaken screaming from the block over. He ducked into his room from the window. Yeah, he was on the second floor, so what? He picked his phone up from off of the desk, and he sat on the balcony outside his window. He dialed a familiar number and set it up to his ear. Hi, to-do. Hello, Midoriya. So, I got my letter. Seriously, hold on. I am at the dinner table, and Endeavor is glaring at me. You didn't have to answer, you know. I'll always answer the phone for you, Midoriya. That made him blush. Anyway, so I got my letter, or disc or whatever. I scored first, with 89 points. Holy shit. Now we can see each other every day. I'm glad I don't have to sneak away. I thought you said you were at the dinner table? You're saying that as if I'm supposed to care. Izuku chuckled. This is really gonna be a great year. He hopes a nice girl makes it in. She was nice. Alright, gotta go. Take your ear piercings out before you go to bed. I will, to do. Stay safe, bye-bye. Click. Katsuki and Izuku had been friends since they were kids. When Katsuki developed his quirk, and Izuku didn't, the kids rendered him quirkless. Katsuki was just confused. He would defend Izuku to the ends of the earth, though. He'd always been top dog, so the children did what he said. He hated people like that. He hated people that followed him around. When the kids found out Izuku had gotten his quirk, they still relentlessly teased him. They called his quirk villainous and would tell him he would go to hell. He just couldn't win. Katsuki still defended him though. As much as he never wanted to say it, he respected Izuku. He didn't follow him around, he viewed Katsuki as an equal. He didn't care about his quirk or his attitude, and he respected that. Izuku could hold his own outstandingly well in a fight, quirk or not. He'd beaten Katsuki a number of times, their scoreboard just a few points away from tying. He could be calm and level-headed when he didn't feel like panicking. Izuku was also smarter than the average person. He'd strategized their way out of bad situations more than once. He was already reading college-level books by the 3rd grade. Katsuki was with him when he got his ears double pierced, at 13 by the way. Then when he got his industrial pierced. And when he got his conch pierced. And when Izuku found out he was fucking addicted to ear cuffs and rings. Don't even forget the charm bracelets. Katsuki was basically just an older brother for Izuku. He wasn't good at the whole making friends thing, but he was grateful. Katsuki and Izuku came out to each other as raging homosexuals. Damn right he teased that nerd for being hopelessly in love with Endeavor's son. Izuku was there for Katsuki when he went deaf and even learned sign language with him. They were gonna teach each other how to drive, too. Either way, they were stuck to each other. However, no matter how good that nerd was in a fight, it didn't stop Katsuki from noticing the bad things about Izuku. He was anxiety-ridden all the time. And he had always been that way. It worried him. Monday, April 6, 2015. Izuku arrived at the gigantic 1A door. He took a deep breath before opening it up and stepping in. His eyes darted around for that red and white hair. He saw it and smiled widely, thinking about how pretty Shudo was. Todoroki! The teen looked over from Yaoyorozu and gave a slight smile. His smiles weren't often, and Izuku cherished them whenever he got one of those rare smiles. Shudo had perfect pearly white teeth. Izuku smiled again and waved. Hi, Midoriya, Todoroki said. He slightly turned his body so that he was slightly facing Izuku. Izuku could hear him just fine. There weren't many students in the classroom. He rushed over and took the only open seat close to Katsuki, just behind him, where he was getting lectured by a teen with choppy hands. Izuku twiddled with the iron rings on his fingers as he waited for the two to stop bickering. Get your feet off of that desk now. The blue-haired teen shouted, moving his hand in a wild, weird gesture. Huh. Katsuki, who was ever inclined to argue with whoever was willing to get in a shouting match with him, shouted back, a wide smirk on his face that said, You're doing exactly what I want you to. Izuku only watched, smiling, but his eyes looked with indifference all the same. It's the first day, and you're already disrespecting this academy by scuffing school property. You cretin. You're kidding me, right? Your old school put a stick up your ass, or were you just born with it? Katsuki said, laughing to himself, but it stopped abruptly when Izuku delivered a swift whack to the back of his head. Hi, Kaken. Izuku greeted with a grin. Katsuki didn't even notice he was there. Izuku loved messing with Katsuki with his overly good stealth. But at this point, he wasn't even hiding that he was there. All he did was sit down and wait for the right moment. Damn you, Izuku. You could have said hello like a normal fucking person. Katsuki had turned his entire body around, so he was facing Izuku. Maybe if you were nicer when I walked in, I might have reconsidered, Izuku said this way too giddily. He had a close-eyed grin on his face. Katsuki often wondered if the nerd was doing that out of habit, or to hide the feral look in his eyes. Shut the hell up. No you hey put those fucking hearing aids back in dash. Izuku switched to signing remarkably quickly, because he was an expert. He'd learned before Katsuki because he knew he'd eventually lose his hearing, or at least part of it. Katsuki gave him the middle finger. Izuku responded by lunging forward to bite it. Katsuki quickly tightened his hand into a fist. Yeah, the little bastard was crazy all right. I'll throw them away dash. The funny thing about Izuku is he actually would throw them away. Then he would buy him a new pair out of guilt. No the hell you won't, you fucking nerd. Yes he would. He hit the back of Katsuki's head again. The teacher was standing at the door. And Izuku wanted him to be fucking quiet. It took you 8 seconds to quiet down. Time is a valuable thing. I'm Shoyuda. The man yawned. Put these on and head outside. The man looked like the personification of death himself. The man was sporting a cup of coffee in hand. Izuku had never seen eye bags so deep. He, fortunately, had an immediate family full of baby-faced people and had the ability to go days without sleeping and get no eye bags. If Izuku didn't know any better, he would think it was a hobo. However, just because his father is a villain does not mean he's not a closet hero fanatic. He liked the man more than All Might, but he liked any other hero more than All Might really. Alright class, we're doing a quirk assessment test. Midoriya, you finished at the top of the practical exam, right? He nodded. Try doing it with your quirk. Aizawa handed Midoriya the ball, and he stepped into the circle. He looked down at it. Send it to heaven. The fifth sphere. Quickly please. The ball crackled and shook in his hand before suddenly disappearing. The scale went from 0 to infinity. Bring it back now, holy warriors. If he didn't tell them specifically when they would bring it back hours later. They were little mischievous troublemakers that required specific directions. The ball fell right back into his hand, and the scale returned to 0. He handed it back to Aizawa and gave a show-stopping smile. He could have sworn he saw Aizawa squint his eyes, but he walked away before he could really tell. In the end, Hagakure ended up second to last, and Mineta was getting suspended. Originally, it wasn't Aizawa's plan to actually expel anyone. It was a logical ruse to push the students to be their best, however. Aizawa saw the way Mineta touched the girls and jumped on it immediately. He absolutely did not allow perverted language and/or actions to anyone. Aizawa is a certified feminist, and he would be that way forever. Midoriya. Wait up. Uraraka said, jogging up from behind him. Izuku turned around with a wave. Well, you already know my name. And this is Bakugu. You can walk with us if you want. Sure. Bye Uraraka. They had walked her to her train and were starting to walk home. He and Kaken were just chatting, making small talk. He had taken off his piercings and pocketed them, and put the retainers in their place by the time they arrived at his house. Izuku said bye to Kaken and rounded his house. He jumped up, caught the bottom of his balcony, and shimmied his way up to his room. He took off his uniform and put on a sweatshirt and pants and went downstairs. Training was not something he felt like doing. It wasn't something he ever felt like doing, but he had to. Otherwise, it'd just be his dad beating the shit out of him. Either way, Hisashi was going to get his ass out of that room and try to hurt him as much as possible. So yeah, he took the walk of shame down the stairs, even stomping as he did it. He kept his eyes in front of him, downcast. Just like always. When Hisashi saw him round the corner that hid the stairs, wordlessly, he ushered Izuku to follow him with a crook of his 2 fingers. Izuku obliged, his jaw straining, but he forced himself to relax. Maybe he wouldn't even have a jaw after this. His father Hisashi is a ticking time bomb. It's always been that way, it will always be that way. He'd been that way even when Mom was alive. Though he never took it out on her. It was always Izuku, and he'd seen his father slap Yoshi once or twice. Hisashi is either cool and calm and eerily quiet, or he's fucking exploding. He could be mad either way, and the only way to tell was if you could see the thick white smoke curling out from his mouth, from his nose. Izuku followed his father out the back door, breathing deeply, preparing himself for the absolute worst. If he didn't die from the flames, maybe it'd be the smoke that suffocated him. Nonetheless, he breathed before he wouldn't be able to. Hisashi had flicked on the backdoor porch light before he left the house, and he let the door close behind Izuku. "How was school today, son?" he said, walking forward into the grass. Izuku shrugged. "It was fine. We had freshman orientation, that was pretty much it." One side of Hisashi's mouth kicked up into a smirk, letting out a small chuckle. "You registered yourself, did you?" He raised an eyebrow. "You didn't say anything about school." "Well, I figured I could do it on my own." Izuku gave his hands something to do by fidgeting with the ends of his shorts, then he got into sparring position. "I'm 15. Did you want to register me?" "No, not really." Hisashi laughed again. "I don't want any trouble from your school, all right, Izuku? High school is not like junior high, you're getting to be a man now, so I don't want any phone calls complaining about my son misbehaving. You understand?" Hisashi took his own position too. Izuku nodded, biting his lip. Somehow, Izuku had ended up pissing him off. First, he'd sent a kick to Hisashi, around his neck. Then he saw the broken chain of the locket on the floor. The locket that Inko gave Hisashi while she was in the hospital, right before she died. Hisashi may be a bad man, but he loved his wife. He'd never hit her, abused her, or anything like that. He loved Inko to pieces, and all he'd done was adore her while she was still here. "Izuku," Hisashi said, the smoke already spilling over from his mouth. The backyard fell into that eerie quiet. Izuku was looking at the ground with wide eyes, frozen. There were no cicadas chorusing, no crickets chirping, nothing. It was just quiet. Hisashi bent down and picked up the broken locket, and Izuku had snapped the clasp and part of the chain. "Izuku," Hisashi warned. Taking a step forward, Izuku took a step back. "I'm gonna kill you." "Oh, I'm gonna..." His father cut himself off, humming with anger. "This chain means more than your life, Izuku. I will kill you. I'm sorry." His self-preservation kicked in, and he ran, darting around Hisashi before he could snatch him up. Izuku went to his balcony, doing what he'd done when he'd first gotten home. Hisashi didn't chase him, though. He didn't even try to grab him as he ran by. He only watched Izuku retreat back into his room, closing and locking his balcony door. It was a silent promise, one that said, "I'll be waiting for you when you get back." He went to the bathroom, looked in the mirror, and wished himself to heaven. Izuku landed in the arms of a full-sized holy warrior. In the human world, they were as small as fairies, if they wanted to be, of course. It was always a shock to see that they were, in fact, much bigger than him. He hit a growth spurt in the 7th grade that made him 5 feet 5 inches, and he hasn't grown since. It was kind of sad, really. His father had tall genes, standing at a height of 6 feet 8 inches, but Izuku had most of his mom's genes anyway. Izuku was the only one on his dad's side of the family to have green hair, green eyes, and short stature. Even Yoshi had been at least 5'9" by the time he was 12. Yes, Izuku is jealous. The warrior's name was Cassiel. This angel was a non-binary, queer, stoner, and still got into heaven. Izuku had learned from these angels that it didn't matter who he liked, or what he identified as, or if he pierced his ears, or whatever. It was okay. As long as he tried his hardest to be a good person with a good heart. "Hi, Izuku. What are you doing here?" she asked. Izuku gasped like he'd forgotten he was sitting in her arms, because he had. He came back to the present. I broke his necklace," he said, his freckled hand flying up and ghosting along his own neck. It explained absolutely nothing, but she didn't pry. "Okay," they said as she set Izuku on his feet. "We just made dinner. Come eat," Cassiel said, not giving him room to argue and not giving him time to answer. She turned her back and started walking towards the building where dinner was being held. Cassiel has hair as black as tar in a pixie cut that fell in layers. It was a stark contrast to their eyes. They were so bright it was like looking into a white star. The angel is pale, but their eyes and skin didn't clash in a bad way. Her eyes were pure ivory, while their skin leaned more towards a cold blue. The dining hall was gigantic. It was a quartz-based building with golden accents and evergreen bushes by the front staircase. The doors were bigger than the door to 1A, and the double wooden doors were Honduras mahogany, absolutely beautiful. The entrance was pushed open and some were already seated. The table was gigantic, along with the chairs. Cassiel sat by her lover, Suna. They were exact opposites. Suna had the most platinum hair that Izuku had ever seen, and her eyes were as dark as Cassiel's hair, that same thick tar color. So in other words, a power couple by all definitions. Their couple dynamic reminded Izuku of Todoroki and him. But they aren't a couple yet. He took a seat next to Suna and said his greetings to everyone. The table was so tall that only his head was peeking over, so he had to sit on his knees. Izuku's knees are bruised, but that was fine. They nearly always are. By the end of dinner, Izuku was getting his mojo back. He hadn't cried at all yet, but he was sure he would be by the end of the night. Izuku pushed it away though. He buried it deep inside his mind, behind a concrete wall, and he didn't dare scratch or poke at it. "Thank you all," he said, bowing to the angels after he'd gotten up from his chair. A hand found his hair, running its fingers through his green locks. "Cassiel." Izuku saw her petting him through his eyelashes. He stood to his full height again, but her hand never left. Strangely, the touch didn't feel patronizing like it managed to be whenever Akui was doing it. It was comforting, something the angel knew he needed. "Have fun with that Todoroki boy, okay?" Izuku bit the inside of his cheek to keep from smiling. He gave a curt nod. Cassiel bumped two of her fingers against his forehead, and it sent him exactly where he needed to go. Shudo's room. Takami was just coming back from the bathroom when he noticed that 1. Shudo's door was open, and 2. There was a boy in there. He'd had to do a double take because he'd literally almost walked right past him. The kid was just chilling in Shudo's empty room, seemingly waiting for him. He stopped, pursing his lips. "Hey kid, what are you doing here?" Kigo figured it was just one of Shudo's friends, but he hadn't even gone to find the other teen, nor was Shudo in the room. The boy jumped and fell out of the desk chair. A very freckled hand reached out and gripped the top of the white wooden desk for dear life. "Jesus H. Christ." Izuku gasped, admitting defeat to himself and starfishing on the floor, not looking at who'd scared him. Shudo peeked his head out of Natsuo's room across the hall. He saw the curly green hair of the beautiful teen, then he stepped out all the way, walking towards his door. "Hi, Takami," Shudo said, out of nowhere. It was apparent that Hawks had not heard him coming. The Birdman whipped around. "Hi, Shudo. You don't seem frightened at all. There's a random boy in your room." "Don't worry, that's just Midoriya." He walked over and helped the freckled teen up, who was dramatically sprawled out on the floor with the back of his hand on his forehead. "Hi, Todoroki." He yawned. Shudo had been tempted to kiss his knuckles, then. Though Izuku isn't flamboyant, he's pretty, if that made sense. When he did look up, however, he saw that familiar blonde hair of a hero that he admired. Not as much as Eraserhead, but he's up there. He jumped back, exclaiming, "Holy shit. Hawks? Why are you here?" Izuku narrowed his eyes. "You wouldn't be here for no reason. This could mean a lot of things. Either you're 1. Investigating Endeavor. No. That would be a bad matchup for you. 2. You're here just lounging around. You're with each other quite a lot, aren't you? Yeah, that would make sense. Or 3. You're dating Tuya. Yeah, that would make the most sense. You're the same age and you're young, and Tuya's always talking about his hot blonde boyfriend. Are you dating Tuya?" Takami was utterly shocked. The kid saw right through him. He didn't even know the little bastard. "Who even are you?" "Oh, sorry, I'm Midoriya. Nice to meet you." "Sorry for not introducing myself. That must have been rude, sorry." "Are you hungry, Midoriya? Endeavor isn't home today. Also, why'd you just pop in here unannounced? You never do that." "Unless you dash," Izuku frowned, and Shudo cut himself off. "Have you eaten?" "Yeah. I ate dinner with my angels. I could take some fruit milk if you have it though." "I'm sorry, what? Angels, what the hell?" Takami asked. He'd been quiet because he was processing that the teen said that Tuya talks about him. He talks about him. His face was laced with confusion that he wasn't even trying to hide. "Oh, it's part of my quirk. Can interact with angels and demons in heaven and hell, as well as the people in purgatory." Izuku smiled. Takami gaped. "Answer the other question," Shudo said. Izuku frowned again, a stark contrast to his previous expression. He didn't, did he? Your grandfather, I mean. He gently took the freckled face into his hand and moved it from side to side, up and down. Shoulda looked the boy over for any new injuries. No. None of that, I'm fine now. Izuku took a worried glance at Kigo, who narrowed his eyes at him. The teen laced his sweaty fingers with each other, stimming nervously. Could I maybe tell you later? Sure, Izuku. That's fine. He pulled the boy into his chest and held him there. He ran his hand through the green ringlets. All that Shudo could think was how good they smelled. He noticed that Izuku had changed shampoo since it became spring. At first it was more florally, so that was a good decision on Izuku's part. Bugs will chase you around. Now, his hair smelled more like vanilla, with honey. Takami stared at the situation in front of him for a good few minutes. Yeah, those kids were definitely in love. Tuya opened his door with so much force that it banged against the wall. Kigo, what is taking you so long? I see you've met Midoriya. You'll be wrapped around his finger in no time. Tuya said. You knew. You're talking to the king of sneakin' people in and out, baby. Of course, I knew. Now move your ass before I light a blunt without you, pretty bird. Tuya grabbed Kigo's wrist, and the other man let himself be dragged into the room. When I tell you I have pot, Kigo. Do you know what that means? Kigo completely disregarded what Tuya had said. You talk about me when I'm gone? I talk about you while you're fucking here. That was the last thing the two teens heard before the door shut and locked behind the two adults. It was quiet for a second. So, they're dating, right? Izuku asked. They're engaged. Oh. Izuku ended up staying the night. He slept on a spare futon on Todoroki's floor. This wasn't the first time it happened. He would stay for multiple days at a time. Hisashi took a long time to cool off. Tuesday, April 7, 2015. Endeavor has yet to figure this out. Tuya and Natsuo would help hide him. It was honestly funny watching him try to figure out the random boy voice in his house. Izuku had to have Cassiel make him a new uniform since he left his at his house. He is not going back anytime soon, too stressful. He got to see Todoroki's sleeping face and messy hair. He was just ugh. If possible, Izuku's hair was even messier than normal. It took him 15 minutes to brush through, and it was complete hell. Todoroki laughed at his frustrated face, which made him even more frustrated. He put on his piercings, diamond earrings to be exact, and one hoop for his conch piercing, and stacked the rings on his fingers. He deemed himself presentable. Izuku would say hot as F***ck, but he didn't want to be arrogant. They snuck out of the window because Endeavor would most definitely be at the dining table. NG is not a morning person, so the giant stick up his ass would be there by now. Izuku told Todoroki to go to his seat, and he snuck up behind Katsuki. He hit the ash blonde in the back of the head. He had his feet on the desk, so he was going to suffer the consequences. Present Mike walked into the door a few minutes later. He went on and on about some passage in English and told the kids to find the mistake. Then there was lunch. They met lunch rush, and Izuku was absolutely ecstatic. The food was delicious. After that, they went back to homeroom. There was no teacher for a hot minute, and then All Might bursted through the door like he owned the fucking place. It annoyed Izuku to no end. All Might wasn't his favorite for a reason. Izuku couldn't forgive him, not after what he did. He doesn't hate All Might, no. Not at all. But that doesn't mean he likes him. Number one hero or not, he was mean and he was cruel. If you're gonna be prejudiced, at least don't hide it. Be more like Endeavor. That man doesn't give a shit what people think of him, just gets his job done. God, Izuku really couldn't get over it. It made him so mad. I am here, walking through the door like a normal person, he said, while he simultaneously busted and broke Aizawa's door. God, All Might is so fucking obnoxious. Don't you understand things like that cost money? It's wasteful and utterly disrespectful. Chatter and murmur broke out around the classroom. The hero stepped up to the podium and stood proudly with his trademark pose. Izuku did nothing but scowl, one so deep it could rival Katsuki's. Katsuki looked over and studied his nerd. When did that nerd's jawline get so fucking sharp? Katsuki knew about that day. Izuku cried for days after it. Katsuki was furious and wanted to kill the man. But then he thought it over. Logically speaking, what's a 14-year-old gonna do to the symbol of peace? After learning his true nature, Katsuki knew he wouldn't be able to hold his own. All Might would probably kick his ass and laugh that stupid fucking laugh. Welcome to the most important class at UA High. Think of it as Heroics 101. Here you will learn the basics of being a pro, and what it means to fight in the name of good. He walked to the side of the podium and did the most stupid fucking pose that Katsuki had ever seen. He stifled a cackle. Let us get into it. Today's lesson will be combat training. Fight training. Katsuki barked. He had that unhinged grin on his face. Hell yeah. Woo. Izuku exclaimed. Once all their costumes were on and everyone was at ground beta, the exercise began. Now, it's time for combat training. Ida raised his hand. This is the battle center from the entrance exam. Will we be conducting urban battles again? He asked. For this class you'll be split into villains and heroes and fight two indoor battles. Without basic training? Ajui asked. The situation is that the Willians have hidden a nuclear weapon somewhere in their hideout. The heroes are trying to dispose of that. The heroes need to capture the villains or get the nuclear weapon back in the allotted time. All Might held up a small rectangular yellow box and continued to explain. Team and opponents will be determined by drawing lots. Team A, Uraraka and Midoriya. Team B, Shuji and Todoroki. Team C, Yaoyorozu and Hagakure. Team Deku and Ida. Team F, Ashido and Oyama. Wow, it must be fate, I'm counting on you. Uraraka said. Izuku nodded and turned to Katsuki. The others shot a glare in return. I'm gonna kick your ass, Kaken. Izuku called from the other side of the line. We do not know the teams yet. Ida said with his Lego hand gestures. The first teams will be, All Might held up D and, these guys. You're a fucking stupid nerdy witch. How in the hell did you do that? Katsuki exclaimed. I'm a fucking practitioner, and I never moved. Also, I've been to hell, Kaken. You know that. Lucifer and Hades don't want me to do stupid shit like that. How do you believe in both? They're from two different beliefs. Don't ask me stupid questions you won't get an answer to. Might as well tell Auntie to prepare Katsudon. Katsuki flipped him off. Acaba de Decker que ha estado en el infierno? Did he just say that he's been to hell? Ciro muttered. I did. You can understand me? I've never met anyone else in Japan who can speak Spanish besides my mom. Most spellbooks are in Latin, so I said fuck it and learned a bunch of other languages too. Stop fucking making friends and fight me. We're supposed to fighting? His face scrunched in confusion. Izuku, you're so smart but unbelievably fucking stupid. It's ridiculous. Katsuki rubbed his temples. Oh, right. Man, the fight could have been over by now and I could have had my Katsudon. Izuku groaned. Is food the only thing you're worried about? Izuku ignored him and turned to Todoroki. The heterochromatic wordlessly opened his palm. Izuku took off his earrings, dropped them in there and grinned. All right, Kaken, I'm ready to whoop your ass. They stood outside the building where the battle was being held. You have 10 minutes to devise a plan. Use it wisely. Katsuki and Ida went inside. As soon as they were out of earshot, they started planning. There's a lot of ways this could go, Uraraka. Ideally, this could be done without confrontation, but I feel badass today. The bomb is around the second or third floor, so that's a start. How did you know that? I mean instincts. 4, 5, and 1 are too obvious. Right. So, Ida is most likely going to stay with the bomb, and Kaken is gonna come for me. I'll distract him. However, the non-confrontational way is that I just warp us both up there. What do you think? I think I'm in the mood for a fight too, Midoriya. Let's go with the first one. All right. Midoriya, did you think of that off the top of your head? That was quick. Well, yeah. He snorted. Go. So they did. They put the earpieces in and split up. On the second floor, Izuku encountered Katsuki. Like always, he started with his left hand. Izuku grabbed his wrist, gauntlet, steered it right, and judo flipped him. "Hi, Kaken." Izuku greeted all too giddily. Katsuki landed face first and flailed. Izuku kept him pinned with a knee on the other's back, and Katsuki's forearm was twisted around, which was also keeping him in place. Katsuki huffed. "Fuck. I'm sorry, was that you giving up?" "No, you fucking nerd. I'll let you off, I won't rough you up too bad." Izuku grinned and pulled the capture tape from his belt. He wrapped it around Katsuki with a fair bit of struggle. "Young Bakugo has been apprehended." "Cassiel," he called. The angel appeared in an instant. She was about the size of Katsuki's hand in angel form. "Watch him, and make sure he doesn't get free. If he does, I give you full permission to go ballistic in your true form." "Why didn't you get someone else to do it?" Her voice echoed inside his head. "Because you actually listened to me. Bye-bye now, have fun, Cass." He walked away, waving. He put his finger up to his ear. "Hi, Uraraka, did you find it?" "Yeah, it was on the third floor like you thought," she whispered. He could vaguely hear Ida monologuing in the background. Weird. "I'll be there in a minute, sit tight." He swiftly made his way up onto the third floor. Izuku saw Uraraka on the other side of the room, hiding behind a pillar. "Suna," he whispered. She appeared. "Full size, knock him out." She groaned. Izuku was the only one who could see her. Suna walked, floated, up behind Ida and squeezed the pressure point in his neck, and he fell forward. "Ida has been apprehended." She hurried and slung her arm around his torso and laid him on his back. "Bye. Tell your classmates that Suna said hello," and vanished. Uraraka stalked forward and touched the bomb with the back of her hand. "You can go back now, Cassiel." "Thanks, or whatever." "Class, who do you think was the MVP in this battle?" All might be asked. Bakugo and Ida were hauled off to Recovery Girl for the rest of the evening. Uraraka and Izuku were seated in the observation room. Yaoyorozu raised her hand. "Yes, young Yaoyorozu?" It was definitely Midoriya. He made a plan in seconds flat, 2 actually. He used his assets to his advantage. He worked swiftly and he got the job done quickly. Azui nodded. "I agree. Not to mention, he overpowered Bakugo." "That's a win in my book," she said, rib-biting after. Izuku blushed from the praise and hid his face in his arms. "You guys?" The students gathered in the classroom after, cleaning up around the room. Izuku had finished cleaning his and the teacher's desk, so he left after saying goodbye to the rest of his classmates. As he was walking down the hallway, lost in his thoughts, he was suddenly pulled into a random classroom. "Excuse me?" he said, looking up at whoever grabbed him. It was Yagi, like it could be anyone else. "Hello, young Midoriya." Izuku glared in shock. How could he be so calm, like he hadn't just pulled a teenager into a classroom and locked the door? Yes, locked the door. Major child molester vibes, boss. That's something Akui would do. "Hello? See, could you let me go, please? I was on my way to see Kaken," Izuku said while simultaneously trying to pull his arm free from All Might's grasp. It was tight, the man was strong, even in his small form. He couldn't help but feel dread as he looked at Yagi, nothing but dread. It was like looking at his grandfather at the same time. Their similarity in height and weight was undeniable. They were one and the same. Yeah, All Might is a hair more charismatic, well, because he was All Might, but Izuku didn't let that fool him. He did, once. Only once. And that was his mistake, and his biggest regret. The man scared, but he didn't let go. "I'm afraid not. I have a question for you." "Okay, and?" It was rude, but it was necessary. The fuck does he need to hold him hostage for in order to ask him a question? It was a dumb explanation, and Izuku could tell that he was missing quite a few chromosomes. What he lacked in intelligence he made up for in strength. "Since you already know my true form, I'm asking you to inherit my quirk." Izuku's face scrunched in confusion. Inherit? Here he goes. "Yes, I have yet to find a successor. You proved yourself to be a worthy vessel." Izuku thought it over. "With all due respect, sir, no. I don't want your quirk." I don't think you understand. You will be my successor. Izuku's mouth parted and his eyes were wide. All Might's arm traveled from his bicep to his hip, and Izuku did not like that. What? No. He yanked himself away from the man and quickly opened the door. Yagi had wrapped his arms around Izuku's torso as a last-minute resort, but Izuku was too quick. He slipped out from under his arms and booked it down the hallway. Izuku is flexible, he is small, and he is fast. Don't let his stature of 5 feet 4 inches suit you. He is 75% limb, and his legs are long. Taking All Might's quirk would be far too dangerous. His grandfather is all for one, and if he were to find out, he'd take it from him. No, not just take. Akui wouldn't make it that simple. Nothing was ever simple. He had no qualms in taking more than he asked for, forever and always. He would hurt Izuku badly. Akui would never kill him, he knew that. But he knew just what to do, what to say, to coax anything out of Izuku. He knew ways of torture that'd have Izuku on the floor begging to die, begging for mercy, screaming his lungs out until his vocal cords snapped like a thread. Izuku kept running as if his life depended on it, because it kind of did. No, scratch that. It really does depend on it. Akui was very angry about his little brother running away from him. His brother, Kaimage Shigaraki, had left most likely because he'd seen Akui was what he'd become, and he'd passed his quirk off to someone else, so in hopes it'd take the spotlight off of the quirk and Akui would lose interest. But instead, that only drew his grandfather's attention more. Akui has been lying dormant all these years, watching the quirk change and grow more powerful. Now that All Might has it, the quirk is at risk of gaining too much power, and it'd be detrimental to the next user it's passed off to if the user isn't strong enough to wield it. Theoretically, Akui is the only one who it can be passed off to, because he shares the most similar features to the current wielder: height, weight, wit, thought process, and the ability to store more than one entire quirk at one time. As soon as he'd found a door far enough away, he slid inside and closed the door back behind him, letting out a deep breath. His eyes had been closed as he slid down onto the floor and rested. Izuku's arms lied on his knees while his head leaned back on the door. Not to mention, All for One is the most powerful villain in Japan. That would make his comeback more powerful tenfold. It would be a nightmare for the entire country of Japan, maybe even the bordering countries. Izuku hadn't even broken a sweat, nor was he panting. He was fit, he knew that. "Midoriya," said Aizawa. "Aizawa? Why Aizawa? Why does Izuku hear Aizawa? It was in his head, right? It had to be. Midoriya?" Izuku's eyes opened, and he looked right up at Shoyuta. His teacher was stood up, looking at him with an expression that said he was curious, and equally as tired. Izuku flinched into sitting up straight, not knowing whether he should stand up and bow or leave out the way he came in. All the teachers stared at him and he stared back. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Am I going to get expelled? I didn't mean to come in here, it was an honest mistake. Please don't expel me." Hey, calm down, yo. "We're not gonna expel you. It was an accident." Present Mike was at his side. He wiped his cheeks with his sleeve. When had he started crying? Sorry." Izuku stood up. "None of that. There's no need for apology." He silently nodded with his head down. Izuku's ears picked up something else. Stomping, running down the hallway. That was definitely Yagi. Is there a closet or something in here? Yeah. He looked around and silently slipped into the storage closet on his left. He heard the voice of the man he was running from. "Did the boy come in here?" He sounded very, very upset. Grandpa uses this tone quite a bit when Izuku misbehaves. "What boy, Yagi?" "That was Aizawa. The Midoriya kid. You know, green hair, short, he's in your class." "No." Then the door slammed shut. Izuku's pretty sure it shook the entire building with the force and effort it had. Flinch. He opened the closet door back up and stepped out. Izuku looked around, and they all stared at him once again. He shrunk into himself. "Why were you hiding from Yagi?" "I already know who he is, don't bother trying to hide it." Aizawa raised an eyebrow. "Who gave you knowledge of that?" "It was an incident, when I was 14. I'd rather not say." "Answer my other question." Not sure if I'm allowed to tell you? You're not allowed to tell me? No dash. The door burst open again, and it was him, again. Izuku took a step back. Izuku looked up at him with terrified eyes. His pupils dilated to pins, and his eyes shook from side to side while he tracked All Might's movements. There you are. I've been looking all over for you. Yagi backed him against the window. With each step he took, his body trembled more. Izuku's hands reached out behind him and he gripped the windowsill. I really gotta go. Me and Kaken are supposed to walk home together, and he'll get mad at me for making him wait. He pleaded. No, you're not leaving yet. Aizawa gripped his capture weapon. Yagi, get away from that child. The man didn't move. Really? You want all the people in here to know your secret? I'll tell them. You're awfully rude to someone who could end your career. That made him falter, and for a second he thought he could get away. But then his phone buzzed. Fuck. Izuku reached into his pocket and answered without looking. He knew who it was already. Take all of the attitude out of your voice now. Yes, father? He coughed. You're in trouble. W.I. You haven't seen me since yesterday. Yesterday? Aizawa signed to Yamada. Mike gave a look. Can you hear him? No, his voice is too low. My cochlear won't pick it up. 1. There's bass in your voice. You don't talk to me with an attitude. 2. I've been texting you for an hour and you ignored every single one. Your grandfather's gonna be upset with me because we're late. So, you'd better hurry up and get that ass home, before I find you myself and fuck you up. Izuku gulped. Why, sir? I understand. Do you? I do. Are you lying? The phone shook next to his ear, and it rattled against his earrings. And no, sir, you know I wouldn't do that. Tell me the rules. What? You heard me, boy. Izuku hit the back of his head of the window. Dad. For Dash. All right. I'll say it, just please don't get to 2. Hurry it up, my father can hear you. Izuku hit the back of his head repeatedly. He looked around. That's a sign of self-harm, Mike. I'm supposed to be respectful and do whatever Papa asks of me. No piercings. No curfew violations. No disobeying. No lying. What the fuck is that supposed to mean? Somewhere in the background, he heard that's a good boy. Now Izuku, tell me what happens if you disobey these rules? Papa took the phone. Izuku took the phone away from his ear and looked at it. He put it back. Don't make me come find you, he said. Izuku drew in a sharp breath and banged his head against the window extra hard for good measure. Papa, please don't make me say it. I'll do whatever you want, just please. Why not? B, because I am at school, and I'm around people, and they'd probably report it. What school do you go to? Mizudafu Central? You sound like you're lying. I'm not Dash. I can tell, Izuku. You're digging yourself a deeper hole. I'm giving you the choice to get here before I find you and hurt you. Click. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. He gasped. He turned around so that he was facing the window. Stop looking at me, all mate. It's nerve-wracking and I'm not in the mood. What is the quickest to get there? He thought out loud. He put his head in his arms. This is the shittiest day of my life. I want to do it so bad. He wants to do what? That's what I thought. He looked out the window. It's too high up, I can't jump out of this. Fuck. You were considering jumping out of a window? Aizawa asked. Izuku shrugged. Sure. I'm gonna throw myself off of the nearest bridge. Did you hear that? Does anyone in here have a mirror? I'll return it by tomorrow, I promise. Midnight threw a pocket-sized one at him, which he caught. Damn it, I still have to go home and put my tux on. Fuck it. I don't care anymore. He quickly took his piercings off and looked at them in his palm. All right, Izuku. Risk them getting damaged or risk your life going to Shoto's house to keep them safe. He muttered to himself. Why is that a question to you? These were gifts and I want to have them intact when I die. Oh. Cassiel. The angel appeared. He didn't care enough to conceal her appearance from the teachers. Take these and put them on my dresser. Thanks. In the drawer. Please. Sure. He opened the compact mirror. Ah shit, I've gotta change out of my uniform, face-bombed. This is the shittiest day of my life. I am so sorry for cursing I in front of you. I don't mean to, I'm just really frustrated. Explanation not excuse. I'll take whatever punishment you'll give me, just not to today. I don't think I've ever heard that one before, Aizawa muttered. Purgatory send me to Papa's house. Quickly please, I'm in trouble. What in the hell was that? Yamada asked after the greenette had unceremoniously teleported, out. The point was that the child was gone, and Hisashi was pissed. Aizawa grunted in agreement. Goddammit, I was so close. Yagi exclaimed. Aizawa shifted. He didn't like that, not one bit. The way that Yagi had been intimidating that teenager, it didn't sit right with him at all. The way Midoriya had come in here just to hide from him. Close to what? Midnight snorted, recrossing her legs and leaning forward. The grin on her face was false. Nemuri is quick to anger, even when it hadn't specifically happened to her. I wanted him to be my successor. Yagi said, as if that explained everything. Why was he running from you then? Aizawa asked. I told him he didn't have an option. Well, good job. You scared the shit out of him in the process, if that was your intention. He looked terrified of you. Yamada said. His voice was partially stern. It was like a slap in the face coming from Hisashi, and while he wasn't quick to anger, he was quick to irritate. Well, I haven't found a successor yet, and my time is running out. That doesn't mean you force it on a child. Aizawa snapped. That's not his problem, Yagi. Yamada doubled down. How else was I supposed to have him? He was completely serious, and that was the problem. Yagi didn't see the error in his actions. You can't have him. If he said no, that's that. Why? He's a child. He doesn't get to make his own decisions. Get the fuck out, are you serious? Aizawa scowled. Judging by that phone call, he's probably had to deal with a lot more people like you. I'm warning you, Yagi. Aizawa doesn't like to say things twice. Yamada said. Aizawa sat silently fuming with the bottom half of his face in his capture weapon. Yagi sputtered and turned around. Then he stomped out like a fucking toddler. Let's talk about that phone call. I mean, the kid looked terrified. Midnight said. Midoriya is familiar, yo? Yeah, I thought so too. It was a case. You're right, Sho. Midoriya Hisashi, was it? For drug abuse, aggravated assault, and battery. Yes. They look just alike, really. Even though he'd got like a completely different color palette, they're carbon copies of each other. You know, I'd be scared of my father too if he was a convicted felon. Yeah. I'm gonna take a nap now. All right, Shoyuda. Yamada gave him finger guns and a wink. That was and they continued talking in a lower volume while they finished grading papers and wrapping up lesson plans. Izuku arrived in Purgatory. Let me have a t-shirt and pants, please? He asked. I really don't want to go home. His clothes were changed in a flash. Thanks. All right, Purgatory, take me to Papa's house. He said, somewhat solemnly. He warped into the parlor and he hurriedly tried to avoid the servants and get to his room, even though Izuku knew at least 3 of them would alert Akui that he was here, and he was late. They all worked in a collective force against him, but he couldn't find it in his heart to be mad at any of them. They just wanted to do their jobs because, in the end, they didn't know. All they could rely on is suspicion, and it went up against the families they had to feed. He understood. Akui grabbed his bicep from behind him, and Izuku knew then that it was all over. He put his head down as he was pulled against his grandfather's chest. You're trying to sneak away without greeting me first? And you had the nerve to be late. Goodness, Izuku, are you sick? What's gotten into you? Izuku nippily shook his head and swallowed. And no, Papa. I wanted to be presentable. Sorry, sir. I didn't want to be late, I had school. The real reason was that Izuku was planning to sneak away and hide in the room for as long as possible. Akui grunted, and Izuku could feel the rumble from the man's stomach rattling his bones. He could tell the man didn't believe him. Izuku started to tremble just then, because he knew what was coming. Izuku flinched when Akui's hands moved down and settled on his hips, his grandfather's two pointer fingers tapping along the front of them. He wanted to reach down, grab his wrist, tell him to cut it out, something to make him stop, but none of that would ever work. Akui pulled his silk-gloved hands back to his sides. "Lead the way," he said, pushing Izuku forward an inch. Izuku obeyed and began walking, leading him through the long corridors in the direction of the room. The man's mere presence thudding behind him as he walked made him tremble and jump more and more as he got closer, flinching at shadows and damn near leaping out of his skin when he turned and looked at Akui's face. The bumble of the company arriving and the steady thud of his own feet was keeping him grounded. Sooner, rather than later, much to Izuku's dismay, they arrived at his room. His unusually pale freckled hand reached up and twisted the doorknob. It rattled with the tremors of his fingers. Izuku's hands were sweating and it took longer than it needed to actually get the door open. "Maid," Akui said before he stepped in. "Bring me the item out of my study quickly." She gave a "yes, master," and scurried off. Probably the collar. The door was shut and locked behind Akui and he rummaged through the closet. Izuku stood in the middle of the room awkwardly and waited for instruction. "Undress," Akui said from behind Izuku. Izuku grabbed his elbow and put his head down. "I haven't been bad, have I? I got here on time. I only upset Dad this past week, I swear. I've dash." Aki's hand gripped his neck semi-tightly. A warning to shut his mouth. "Just do what I ask and I won't be upset." Izuku nodded, not trusting his voice. And he did what he was told. Akui alternated around, tucking in his white shirt, tucking in his pockets, crouching, and tying Izuku's bow tie. The boy slipped his Oxfords on and turned to his grandfather. All for one took the item from the maid and clasped it around Izuku's neck. A collar, but not like the other one. This one was smaller and more lightweight, but it still served the same purpose. His quirk wouldn't work while it was on. The guests would still be able to see it and it's still just as embarrassing as the other collar. A golden cage is still a cage. Piercing holes? That's interesting. Akui's fingers traced them from behind. The teen was startled. He wasn't even aware that Akui noticed them. Usually he'd have the retainers in, but it had slipped his mind. One hand left Izuku's ear and it went down his spine to his bottom, then it went to his hip. Shivers. "Oh, the things I'll do to you, boy," he whispered. Akui nudged him forward. Izuku took his seat on the left of his father and the right of Akui, who was sitting at the head of the long oakwood oval table. There was a ghost of a smile on his face, and if the glint in his eye was anything to go by, Akui was planning something. Though, it had nothing to do with the guests and everything to do with Izuku. Call him cynical, but he knew his grandfather's tells like the back of his own hand. Yoshi was there, along with his aunt, uncle, and younger cousins. The twins, Eli's and Aorisi, were 7, and they were seated next to each other, just left of their father, Niven, who was left of his wife, their mother, Aina. Yoshi was sitting right of her, and Yoshi's youngest sister Zyja was next to him. Niven married into this family. He has bright white eyes and dark brown hair. But Aina, it was glaringly obvious whose daughter she was. Aina has ivory hair that's white as a dove and eyes as red as roses. It was always said that the firstborn always looks the most like their father, and it was apparent with Yoshi. Though she had white hair, her eyes were white like Niven's, but don't let that fool you, Kui's genes are the strongest. It went in a line, from Hisashi down to Zyja, skip over Yoshi. They all literally looked like albino rats waiting for cheese, no offense or anything. The realization that he was the only one in his entire family to have green hair, green eyes, and freckles. That was so embarrassing. If his mother were here, it'd make more sense. He looks just like his father, but white doesn't make green, and these people probably know basic color theory. He saw some familiar and unfamiliar faces, like Tamura. There was Himiko and Spinner. They were in dinner party etiquette, along with compress, no mask, hat, but he kept the Biolo tie. The league all sat in a group together, and they'd sit at the kids' table if there were a kids' table. Most were members of high society. Izuku had seen a few of them. Wow, he wonders what the public would think. Important people, having dinner at a villain's party? A scandal waiting to happen, and Izuku lives for drama. Nonetheless, he wouldn't do anything. As much as he wished for death, Tattling was not the way. Join hands, let's say grace. He said. Izuku put his hand in his grandfather's outstretched palm and did the same for his father. The people sitting at the table looked hesitant, but followed suit. Dear Lord, thank you for this food we're about to receive, for the nourishment of our bodies. For Christ's sake, Amen. Izuku cringed and got glares shot at him from both men. He silently apologized and put his hands on his lap. He got a look from his grandfather in return that said it all. He couldn't control it. Izuku speaks to Yeshua on like a day-to-day basis, and he thought the praying like 58 times a day that Catholics do was kind of weird and a little culty. Sorry, he whispered. The high society guests tried to pick up their forks and eat, but got a glare shot at them by Izuku, Yoshi, Akui, and Hisashi. Izuku and Yoshi out of concern for their safety. Hisashi and Akui out of anger, making them put their forks down. Akui picked up his fork and began eating. Yes, when in the presence of the most powerful villain in Japan and possibly the oldest person in the world, you wait for him to begin eating. You wait a minute or two and then you start eating. Or, don't and have him take it as a sign of disrespect, then you lose your life or get very, very close to it. He flashed an apologetic smile to the guests and silently nodded for them to begin. Izuku picked up his own sleek black chopsticks and started eating. He recognized it was some kind of meat and yellow rice. It was better than eating takeout like he does every day, so he was grateful. He ate more than usual to not look ungrateful, but ate less than all of it because he didn't want to eat too much. When he was done, he stacked his dirty dishes together and put his white cloth napkin on top. God, I have to pee so bad. Papa, he whispered, getting the man's attention. Yes, Izuku. May I be excused? Please. Sure. You have 5 minutes, he said with a wave of his hand. Izuku slid out of his chair, swiftly bowed to the adults he was sitting in between and fast walked to the nearest washroom. When he got back, he bowed again to his dad and grandfather and slid back into his chair. The gigantic hand of his grandpa rested on his knee with a tight squeeze, and it stayed there, all the way up until it was time for the guests to leave. When Akui momentarily removed it, it was to walk the guests out, with Izuku obediently by his side waving the guests off with a polite smile. As soon as the door closed, Akui's smile dropped. Izuku was picked up by his waist and thrown over his grandfather's shoulder with a thud. He didn't even try to squirm, he knew it was useless. His door was thrown open, he recognized it by the way it creaked. He let out an involuntary whimper, which was quickly shut down. Akui threw him on the bed and quickly stripped his own pants. Izuku flinched violently at the familiar sound of a belt buckle. All for one sat down on the bed and ushered his boy over with his pointer and middle finger. Izuku was quick to crawl over and settle in his grandfather's lap. Akui's arm wrapped around his waist and unbuttoned his dress shirt from the bottom. He ignored the way a thing brushed against his back. He was pushed on his back again and his pants were roughly tugged off. On your stomach, boy. And Izuku flipped over, trying to mentally prepare himself for what was about to happen, like he had done so many times before. Akui never prepared him, just forced his way in. The belt that was around his face was preventing him from screaming. He let out a choked sob. Akui sat there thrusting in his grandson for the most part of an hour before he released in the boy. When he was done, he turned a very tired Izuku onto his back and undid the belt from around the boy's head. Your father will deal with the ear piercings. Take a shower, you're disgusting. Izuku ducked his head in shame, but nodded. What else was he supposed to do? It's not like he can act how he acts at school. And vice versa. Needless to say, Izuku got beat that night. Despite his aching body and despite his exhaustion, he warped himself to Todoroki's house. Midoriya? Shudo quickly caught Izuku before he hit head. Is he okay? Natsuo asked, thoroughly startled by the boy who just appeared. Does he always do that? Shudo laid Izuku on the bed and checked his pulse. He's not dying, cool, smirking face. His fever was just extremely high. Like, scorching hot. Tia, get me a wet cold towel. The man groaned exaggeratedly from the other room, but the door frame shook, indicating he came out of his hole. Izuku's breathing was labored and his heart was pounding against his chest. His head hurt so bad, and his lower half ached. He heard his blood rushing through his veins. It was a mess. Tuya arrived with the cold towel a few minutes later and handed it to Shudo. He quickly got to work putting the towel on Izuku's forehead. The greenette calmed down slightly and softly put his hand around Shudo's wrist. He whined in pain. "What can I do to help you, Midoriya?" Izuku groaned and shifted his body with a wince. "Tylenol," he wheezed. Tuya jogged out to the room to retrieve the pain medicine. He was back after a minute of cabinets and medication rattling. Izuku took the pills dry, and the pain seemed to only get worse before it got better. When he came to 20 minutes later, he sat up. "Do you guys have any snacks?" "Yes, we have snacks." Izuku beamed and got up. He took himself to the kitchen, where he found a lot of snacks. He doesn't have these at home because he's supposed to be watching his figure. Dad doesn't have to know. He picked up a Kit Kat bar and a few Jolly Rancher thingies. Izuku twisted open the wrapper, popped one in his mouth and sucked on it while he went back to Shudo's room. He plopped down in Shudo's desk chair with his legs over the arm of it. "I'm staying here tonight." "I know, Midoriya." They both smiled, albeit Shudo's smaller than Izuku's, but he took that as a win. He continued to chomp on his candy and have little conversations with Shudo about anything throughout the night until he got sleepy and rolled out his futon. Izuku woke up in the middle of the night with a full bladder and a very groggy mind. He got up and quietly opened the sliding door and closed it behind himself. He wandered the dark halls of the Todoroki house and went to the washroom. He took note of the news blasting from the living room TV. Ah, so Endeavor is home. He'd have to be quiet. He didn't turn the lights on. Once he was done doing his business, he washed his hands at the lowest setting and exited. He bumped into a big man's chest. "So much for trying to be quiet. Who are you and why are you in my house?" His back hit the wall. He panicked, but silently. "I am a study partner for your son, and my name is Midoriya Izuku, sir." "Which son?" "Shudo." "How old are you, little boy?" "I'm not little, sir. I'm 15. Endeavor grunted. "Did he choose to be your partner?" Endeavor's teal eyes narrowed. "No. Aizawa assigned us together." Radioactive green narrowed too. Tuya took this as a good time to leave his room before the situation escalated. Endeavor is never against injuring kids. "Oh, hey Greenie." Izuku momentarily took his eyes off of Endeavor and looked at Tuya. "Hi, Todoroki too?" Tuya laughed. "Tuya, what are you doing awake?" "Disrespectfully shut the fuck up, old man. I was getting a snack." Enji turned his attention away from the green-eyed boy and looked at his son instead. "The hell did you say to me?" Izuku gave Tuya a what the fuck look and got a wink in return. Izuku silently sighed and made his way back to Shudo's room as quickly as he could. Luckily for Tuya, Enji doesn't know that Izuku knows, so he probably won't get hurt. Izuku was proved right when he heard no noise but Endeavor's obnoxious laughter to the TV. Wednesday, April 8, 2015. The morning was a blur of Tuya tying Izuku's tie, because apparently fathers are supposed to do that, eating breakfast that was super good, although Izuku can't remember the name, and Izuku messing with his unruly green hair and getting his piercings from Cassiel. Hawks was back, making the morning that much more fun. "We could give you a ride," Tuya said, twirling the keys around his finger. "Really? But don't you guys have patrol, or something?" Izuku asked. "Of course. New route today, so we'll have to take the car anyway," Kigo exclaimed as his wings puffed up and almost hit Tuya in the face. "Kigo, it's too damn early for you to be this energetic. You haven't even had coffee." "You're completely right, but I ate half a pan of brownies last night, so you'll have to deal with this a few more days." Tuya rolled his eyes and unlocked the front door. Fuyumi was already about to leave for work and dropped Natsuo off for school. They were all just bumbling in the kitchen. "My crew, let's go." Tuya held the door open for his crew, consisting of Izuku, Shuto, Kigo, and himself. He wouldn't tell them the real reason he wanted to drop them off. They didn't have to know. The drive was short but very eventful. Kigo kept trying to connect his phone to play that fucking Jugimu song that Tuya hates. It's too happy and it's fucking annoying. Tuya pulled around to a different entrance when he saw all the reporters. Fuck that. Hawk stayed in the car while Tuya walked them in. Murmurs broke out in the hallway. What was number 3 Hero Dabi here for? Titiya, you seem to know where you're going. Izuku said. Tuya ignored him and continued on his way to the 1A classroom. When he got there, Aizawa was already sitting at his desk. Perfect. When he noticed Tuya standing there, he looked between the three of them and stifled the urge to cry. Come on Shoyuta, you've got a reputation to keep. He close-eyed sighed. Look at you kid. He said, definitely not fondly. I'm 24. Don't make me feel old. Excuse me, do you know each other? He's my old teacher. Tuya said. Aizawa smiled. You could see it by the way his eyes crinkled. Anyway, I've got patrol to do. Ta-da. And with that, Tuya spun on his heel and left. Anyway, Izuku took his seat behind Katsuki and prepared for his hour-long lecture from Katsuki. As soon as his ass hit the chair, Katsuki swiveled around with a deep scowl. The fuck were you at yesterday, huh? We were supposed to walk home together. Sorry, Kakin. I got held up with All Might, then I had to go home cause my dad had some weird dinner party and then I got hurt so I stayed at Todoroki's house and then now I'm really sorry cause I bailed on you yesterday but I dash. Take a fucking breather. You'll talk yourself to death. Right, sorry. But All Might was being so consistent even when I told him I had somewhere to be, and now he's gonna try to track me down cause he's really fucking pissed dash. What did I just say? Breath, nerd. Right. I'll just tell you later. Izuku said because class was starting. They didn't have another incident until English class. After the press had broken in and the alarm sounded, everyone was shaken up. Izuku was doing his absolute best to ignore the throb in his hips, and it was working. Until he got up from his desk and hit his hip on the table. Izuku wasn't paying enough attention to his surroundings, and that's why he was in this situation where he'd hurt himself yet again. He got dizzy and he swayed before collapsing. Katsuki caught him before he hit the ground. Shrub. Izuku would have laughed if the situation weren't so serious. His vision was blurry, like last night, but worse. He wrapped his arms around himself. This wasn't his fault. It was no one's, actually, nobody but his. But that doctor couldn't heal him like Yoshi could. His name was Dr. Garaki, and he was very handsy. More than what was required. Present Mike had gotten up to assess the situation, since all of his students were crowded in one spot. Midoriya? He asked, crouching down. Izuku was in a fetal position at this point and his face was scrunched up. He was writhing in pain. Bakugu, take him to Recovery Girl, I'll get the story later. Izuku had fainted. Katsuki was currently carrying him down the hallway being as careful as he could. Izuku opened his eyes and looked up. His head was pounding and he felt like he was being burned alive. He saw the outline of blonde hair and breathed a shaky sigh. He knew he was safe. Katsuki would take care of him, it was fine, he was fine. Izuku closed his eyes and let the steady rock of being carried and the thump of Katsuki's footsteps calm him, slightly. Katsuki waltzed into Recovery Girl's office and placed Izuku on a bed. He watched as the boy groaned and it definitely did not tug at Katsuki's heart. Recovery Girl hopped up from her chair and sighed. What happened to him? She checked his pulse, it was shallow. He hit his side on the desk and he fainted. Hand me an ice pack from out of that freezer, young man. Katsuki wanted to reply with something snarky, but he couldn't bring himself to. Not when his brother, his best friend, was in a state like this. He bent his body over to open the little mini fridge and picked up 2 from the top. Katsuki gave them to the doctor. She took his temperature first. She shook her head and sighed. She placed the ice packs on his neck and stomach. 135, she murmured. Did he have any injuries prior to now? Nichim. He looked like he was in pain but I didn't want to pry. You should ask Icy Hot, he stayed over last night. Katsuki said, taking a seat in the chair next to Izuku's bed. Izuku was making pained whimpers in his sleep, saying words Katsuki can't understand. The only things he heard were pleads, protests, and apologies. What the fuck? His brows furrowed and he shook Izuku's elbow, and did it until the boy woke up. Izuku startled out of his skin, spewing apologies and begging, pleading not to be hurt. Hey, calm the fuck down, will you? Huh. I said calm down. K Kaken? Yes. Where am I? Recovery girl. Izuku's were still glazed over, he whimpered. Please don't let him get me. Katsuki's brows furrowed, and he reached forward to take the freckled hand in his. Who? Izuku sobbed. Please, I don't want to go back. Izuku, I can't help you if I don't know what you're talking about. I can't tell you. He'll find me and he'll dash. Another heart-wrenching sob tore itself through Izuku's throat. It took 20 minutes to calm Izuku down. Katsuki was genuinely worried. Who's this man that Izuku's talking about? Izuku rocked back and forth, and the three of them sat in a tense silence, but Recovery Girl seemed to pay it no mind. She did keep asking if the both of them wanted Kamui Woods Pez candy. Katsuki was fucking tired of sitting in silence. Being a loud person by nature, it didn't really sit well with him. So, you gonna tell me what the fuck that was about? Young man. Izuku shook his head. MHMN. Why not? Didn't mean to bring it up. I'm gonna get it out of you. I hope so. You can't just say ominous shit like that. The fuck is wrong with you? Recovery Girl's head popped out from behind the curtain, and she popped Katsuki in the shin with her cane. Ouch. My bad, Jesus. I warned you. Katsuki got the first laugh out of Izuku for his time in RG's office. Alright, listen here. I'm glad you get entertainment out of my pain. Izuku only laughed harder, and Katsuki let a smile, a genuine smile, embrace his own face. They went back to class, and Izuku was told to come to the teacher's lounge after school. Katsuki stayed with him. Mike-sensei settled into his chair next to Aizawa, who looked like he wanted to dig a hole in the ground and bury himself in it. Izuku stood in front of him, next to Katsuki, anxiously fidgeting because God All Might was staring at him and wasn't looking away. Katsuki glared back, pulling Izuku closer him by his wrist. Alrighty. So what happened to you earlier? I need to know so I can put it on your medical record. I fell down a flight of stairs? Present Mike looked at the notes Recovery Girl made. You've been walking on a fractured pelvis all day and didn't tell anyone? It's only fractured? I thought for sure I broke it. That's even worse. Did it just not hurt? It wasn't that bad, really. It happens a lot, so I just ignore it until it hurts bad enough. You break your pelvis often? The teachers in there stared at him with shock. Aizawa? Not so much, but his tense body gave him away. Midnight sat up from her spot on the couch and brushed through her hair. Are you fucking serious, nerd? It wasn't that bad. I think you guys are overreacting. It only happened like 9 or 10 times, and I'm fine now, so it's no biggie. The bad part to Aizawa was, the kid seemed genuinely serious, with no trace of a lie. Oh yeah, problem children everywhere. Let's not even mention you wanted to jump out of a window yesterday, he said. Katsuki turned his entire body to Izuku and looked down at the boy's face. What? You're unreal, it's not even funny. Relax, Kaken, it wasn't even like that. I was in a rush, and I was gonna be late. I had a bunch of shit to do. So you jump out of a window, huh? I should have my mom kick your ass. You can't tell her. I'll tell everyone you like to read romance novels. Katsuki threatened to flick Izuku's forehead. Listen here, you little shit. Hey, calm down. I still don't know the story with your injury yet, Greenie. Sorry. So I hit my hip on the desk and I got dizzy because it was already fractured, then I fainted because my temperature was high, then I woke up in Recovery Girl's office and went back to class. Okay, alright, that's cool. Thanks, you're dismissed. Izuku thanked him, and they turned to leave. No, you're not. Yagi said, deciding to speak up for the first time. Izuku massaged the bridge of his nose, muttered, "Oh my God," then turned back around. Yes, what exactly could I do for you? You know what I want from you. Yes, and I won't be giving it to you. Find someone else. In a second, All Might was in front of Izuku. His long legs got him there quickly. Izuku fought the urge to flinch and run away. Him and Papa had so many similarities, and it made nausea flip and roll in his stomach. Tough it out, Izuku. It's fine. You can't intimidate me into taking it. I already said no and my answer won't change. You'll take it because I said so. I'm an adult and you do what I say. And who says I won't report you? I've got a bunch of witnesses right here. I don't think Aizawa-sensei likes you all that much. Who'd believe you? I'm the #1 hero. But, in this form you're just another man. You'd have no choice but to reveal your identity to keep yourself out of jail. It doesn't go well for you either way. Young man, I will expel you. Izuku was increasingly getting more upset, and it showed. His brows kept furrowing and his jaw kept clenching, so did his fists. He hadn't been this mad in a while, and Katsuki took a step back. Izuku got dangerous when he was like this, and he didn't want to be in the crossfire. Izuku growled, like a wild animal, and Katsuki was ready to get the fuck out. You're upset because I won't take your stupid quirk, are you serious? I don't fucking trust you, and you're making it worse. Izuku yelled at the man. Do you know what that kind of thing would do to me? I'm fucking 15. It'd wreck my body until I learn how to use it. I'm not prepared for something like that, and I'm not willing to put myself through it either. I thought you'd be willing to dash. Shut the fuck up, I'm not done. It'd put a target on my back, and I'm not gonna give up my life for you. Young man, calm dash. Stop talking. When the man closed his mouth, Izuku continued. You want to know why I don't like you, All Might? I know, but surely you're overreacting dash. Did I say you could speak? You don't get to tell me if I'm overreacting, but I want to rub it in your face, so listen up. I don't like being interrupted. You left me on a skyscraper after violently crushing my dreams. Hopped away and didn't even look back. I got bullied every fucking day, as a person with a quirk who people consider villainous. I got told to kill myself 3 times that day. What would have happened if I took their advice? I would have jumped off of a 15-story building and it would have ended for me. Would you even feel bad? Then I went and saved Kaken, because you didn't do your job as a hero and seal the damn villain in an actual container. You put him in a plastic cup. I got scolded for putting myself in danger for trying to help him, and you came and fucked my day up again. Then I went home to my dad who fucked my day up again. Then my grandpa, who fucked it up again. I went back to that roof and I actually considered it. I wrote a little note and everything. I was tired of the jeering, the taunting, the poking, the probing, the deep groping. Izuku sniffled. I've always had it hard, and no matter how much I tell myself that other people have it worse, I want to be normal. Who was on TV that day, and my father found out what I did, saving Kaken. He broke my fucking nose. Thought I was trying to sully his name, or whatever. Izuku shifted on his feet, starting to regret not leaving when he had the chance. He was getting nervous. With all due respect, All Might, I really can't have your quirk. I still want to live out my childhood before I don't have one anymore. I know you had to give up yours, and I'm sorry that happened to you, but repeating the cycle doesn't make it better. Then he left, with Katsuki right after him. Katsuki offered to piggyback him all the way home, and Izuku gratefully took it. Mitsuki could sense that her boys were in distress, so she didn't push them to talk. She made Izuku Katsudon his favorite, and the boy lit up, thanking her endlessly. Izuku had taken a nap after that. When he woke up, it was dark. The red LED clock on Katsuki's nightstand read 8:14. He sat up. So he hadn't been asleep that long, maybe an hour. Katsuki was sitting at his desk with his back turned. Good morning, princess. Don't call me that. How did you even know I was awake? You're louder than you think you are when you're not paying attention. Izuku let out a soft, ew. There was a heavy silence as the rest of the teachers tried to process the things they just heard. There was no doubt that Midoriya was telling the truth. Yagi had even admitted to it. For the first time in his life, Yamada was rendered speechless. It truly shocked him to hear. He could never comprehend how adult could be so cruel to children, knowingly or not. It made no difference. Surprisingly, it was Aizawa to speak first. Speaking was never something he'd been fond of, unless he was significantly drunk, but that's neither here nor there. His tone was venomous, terrifying, laced with concern, care, a tenderness, because he knew what it was like. Yamada recognized it by the look on his husband's face. He knew Shoyuta better than he knew the back of his own hand. Hizashi saw that anger of his contort into fierce indignation with just a twitching of his eyebrow, a wiggling of his ear while it turned red-hot, and the dimple on his left cheek showing as his mouth drew into a small frown. It was clear, to Hizashi at least, that Shoyuta was absolutely seething. You left a child at the top of a building? Aizawa, it truly wasn't that big of a deal. It was a sludge villain and I had to get him to a police station. Yagi said with a flick of his wrist, as if to dismiss the conversation, like he couldn't be bothered. It was time-sensitive. That villain attacked him. The first thing you should have done was brought him to the hospital to have him checked over. Shoyuta said, this altercation could have brought on diseases, a potential flare-up, anything. You don't know if he has asthma, or any of that. You don't care either. Well, he seemed fine. He was going to kill himself. All teenagers seem fine. Well, I mean he's here now. Yagi shrugged. Aizawa slammed his hand on the table, startling everyone. I was only being realistic. A boy with a quirk that villainous, that evil, he cannot be a hero. It's just not in his cards, I'm sorry. It's the truth. Realistic? He saved a girl from getting crushed under a robot on his first day. Nobody else did that. Shoyuta said, he could have been selfish, left her behind. He didn't. I would have left her behind when I was 15, had I been put in that situation. You don't really believe he did that out of the kindness of his heart, do you? Come on, Aizawa. He was only doing it to get into the school's good graces, I'm telling you. He wanted those rescue points. How would he have known about the rescue points, Yagi? Give me one good answer, and I will try to level with you. Okay? I will try to understand where you're coming from. Listen, he said, I am a pious, church-going man. I know the devil when I see it, and the devil is in him. Yeah, it's always the pious, church-going men, isn't it? Shoyuta glared at him something fierce, scooting his chair back, but not getting up. Hizashi, even in his haze, had enough mind to put a hand on his thigh, trying to bring him back down to earth. Shoyuta responded by gripping Hizashi's hand, intertwining their fingers with his palm over the back of the blonde's hand. I just believe he'd be better off with the villains. It's best that way, it keeps the natural order. He makes the crimes and we catch the criminals. Wait, hold on. You mean you want someone like him on the opposite side? Midnight interrupted. That boy is smart as a whip. He got a perfect score on his entrance essay. He's got so much potential and we're only 2 days into his first year. Why would you encourage something like that? You keep this up, you'll force him into villainy. Ken said. Sekijiro's right. Shoyuta said. He won't have a choice if you keep on fucking picking at him. Not to mention, we can already see signs of abuse coming from him. I mean, he's got his father, his grandfather, and a teacher at his throat. You know, men with authority who he's supposed to be able to trust. Yamada said, quieter than usual. There was no doubt that he was upset, and rightfully so. He's probably just overreacting. A few hits is nothing. How do you think I trained to be the #1 hero? You're sick, Yagi. Aizawa said, his knuckles turning white as he gripped Hizashi's hand. Wow. Now I've got to put the kid in therapy because he's obviously not okay. You are not allowed near him if another teacher is present. Do I make myself clear? I won't do anything to him. Yeah, I'll need a lot more than that. You can't be trusted around him. You can't be trusted around any child, for that matter. But I suppose it's all water under the bridge for you, Yagi. Aizawa, I really think you're overreacting. Why can't I be trusted around him? Shuta's quirk flared for a second before he got himself under control. Because. Not that I have to explain myself or my reasoning. You've assaulted him in front of me more than once, and you've done God knows what in private. I don't want you around him. Aizawa glared at the man as he stood in a stupor. As much as Shoyuta wanted to stay, he had a husband to comfort and a son to take care of. Come on, Hizashi. We're leaving now. The man didn't hesitate to slide out from his desk and follow Shoyuta to the car. Hitoshi was in the hallway, outside the door. He automatically followed after them. How much of that did you hear? Nothing, just got here. Hitoshi reached for the thermos on the side pocket of his backpack. He took note of the upset look on his parents' face, more so of Shoyuta, and raised an eyebrow. Dad, you're pouting again. Is everything all right? Shoyuta looked over his shoulder, and his expression mirrored Hitoshi's for a second, before he gave a grunt in response. So neither of them were in the mood for talking, noted. When they'd gotten home, Hisashi went to take a shower first, which was strange. He always waited until Shoyuta was done to take a bath before his radio show. Hitoshi was confused. He'd never seen anything like it. Hisashi hadn't uttered a word since last class. It felt like the world was ending without his bubby smiling. He didn't even greet the cats who were batting at his feet when he walked in, hadn't even seemed to notice them. He just made a beeline straight for the master bathroom. Hitoshi took a long sip of his nearly empty thermos and glanced over to his dad, mindful of the cat, their tabby Abril, on his shoulder. Will Bubby be okay, Dad? His tone was quiet, solemn even. I don't like seeing him like this. Aizawa sighed heavily. I'm sure he will. He's strong, he's strong. We just have to do our best to make him better. The older man picked one of the other twin cats who was sitting at his feet, a short hair. His name was Pluto. The other twin Mars was glaring at Shoyuta from the couch. Mars was usually very protective of his brother. The two were practically joined at the hip, but he could sense the distress and that the man needed comfort. So he let it slide for now. The short hairs were pure white and can't be easily told apart, appearance-wise anyway. The cats knew their own names, and one had an attitude all the time, so it wasn't that big of an issue. Mars hopped into his scarf and settled there, content. Shoyuta took a sip of his own freshly brewed coffee, sighing again. I'm gonna go check on him, he said, putting the cat back on the floor, who wandered back over to his brother. Shoyuta gave 2 knocks. Zashi? He asked, and heard no response. He'd figured he wouldn't. Hisashi didn't wear his hearing aids in the shower. That'd be money down the drain, literally. Hisashi? Are you okay? Shoyuta stomped on the floor 3 times, trying to get his attention through vibrations. It was his signature "Are you alright?" when he knew Hisashi couldn't see or hear him. But he got nothing again. Steam was flowing out from under the door, and the knob was warm. That couldn't be good at all. I'm coming in, he said. He twisted the knob and was immediately hit with the excessive amount of heat in the bathroom. Shoyuta went over to the shower, slowly. The bathroom tile was wet with steam, and he really didn't want to slip. Hisashi's normally pale skin was a dark pink, close to peeling off, and the man was still scrubbing. It was painful to see him scrubbing like that, nearly making scabs of himself on his own. Hisashi! Shoyuta took the white linen away from him and pulled him out of his daze. His eyes were wide and silent tears streamed down his face. Hisashi's breath was trembling, and he was shivering even though the bathroom was scorching hot. Step out, come on. Shoyuta signed, and guided him out as gently as he could. He took the towel off the rack and wrapped it around Hisashi's shoulders. Hisashi pulled it close, burying his nose in it. I'm sorry, Bear. Shoyuta scared. No apologies, he signed sharply, not harsh but stern. You can apologize to me by doing right by yourself. He put Hisashi's glasses on, getting a small smile. I can try. Once Hisashi was calm and settled, he cuddled up to Shoyuta. The black-haired man ran his fingers through his husband's hair, pathetically trying to plait it but failing every time. Do you want to talk about it? Hisashi stayed silent for a few minutes, contemplating, thinking as the offer hung in the air. I don't want him to be like me. I don't want him to wait until it's too late and nothing can be done. I know deep down. I feel what he's feeling, I feel everything. I know he's hurting and he feels like he's powerless, but he's not. With one word, we can get him out of there. I need him to reach out. I need him to ask for help. Earlier he said that he got groped, and it's worse than he's letting on, I know. It wasn't any stupid kids, he would have said. He would have made it clear, but he didn't. That's a problem for me. We'll help him, Hisashi. We'll be there for him, like you were there for me. Shoyuta said. Hizashi gave him a solemn smile, pushing his glasses up the bridge of his nose. Like you were there for me? Yeah.